This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Teras Cassidy in the third chair.
How about that EM Pulse Drive?
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming. Coming at the speed of a German Spina Walker on supernatural biofuel over an open road.
Nice.
Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon who are helping us keep the lights on. That includes this time around Brian Emra, Brian Kassning, Canada Andy, Casper Wong, and Chris Crisingino. That's gotta be wrong. I'm Geek Limit again, your host. Today our panelists are Russ Wehrmacht Wakelin and the Grand Poobah of Global Peregrination, Teras Canadian Special Forces Cassidy. Let's begin. Issue number 1. As the world becomes smaller and smaller around us and the usual travel destinations become closer and closer to more and more of the population of the world, those planning and arranging travel abroad must become more and more creative in selecting and designing itineraries for the world-weary traveler. Question. According to many online travel blogs and magazines, what is the most exotic destination for vacation goers today? Mount Roraima, Russ.
Vietnam.
North Tanzania, Teras.
Chicago.
That depends on the day of the week. Wrong! 5 hours away from Tokyo by high-speed train, the Kawachi Fuji Gardens of Japan takes the form of a 15-kilometer wire tunnel strewn with the most colorful and amazing array of flowers on the entire island. If you go in for that sort of thing. Issue number 2. For over 70 years, atomic bombs have been the bane and fascination of cultures around the world. There have been endless debates over the only 2 uses of these terrible weapons in anger, and over who should and should not have access to them today. These debates stretch into fiction as well, with all sorts of strange and terrible events attributed to the use of nuclear weapons. Question. In the famous Tom Lehrer song, Who's Next, about global nuclear proliferation, who is the last political entity to successfully develop the atomic bomb? James Rosenquist Russ.
Canada.
Tony Price Teras.
Damn it, I will say Canada also.
That would make you both wrong! Alabama! Alabama! Roll, Alabama, roll!
What?
Issue number 3.
What?
Did I mention it was a comedy song?
That makes no
Issue number
sense.
3. As the world around us before and after our subjective point on the time-space continuum gets stranger and stranger, many folks turn to alternative history for their fictional release. It is often heartwarming, or at least less scary, to think about the way things might have been than to face the way they are today. Question. In the first accepted instance of alternative history fiction, Ab Urbe Condita Libre, the Roman historian Livy contemplated what might have happened if what power had come to face Rome. Ring around the sun, Russ.
I'm going to go with Egypt.
Sideways in time, Teras.
Mesopotamia.
Wow. So wildly out of time phase, but I guess that goes with the whole, and Russ is unaware that Rome conquered Egypt.
Yes,
but anyway,
but
Alexander the Great. It was Alexander the Great. What if he had turned west instead of east? Of course, all of you fans of Ab Urbe Condita Libre, don't email me about my pronunciation either. My Latin classes aren't far in the past. Issue number 4. When thinking about the development of all sorts of scary, advanced, or strange technology for fictional warfare, one of the most common, usually deployed by the bad guys due to the moral and ethical cost, is bioengineering. The creation of nightmare creatures to fight our wars for us is enticing, until you factor in the cost to those creatures themselves. Question. What 1932 satirical novel dealt with a genetic modification of offspring, creating an artificial caste system that threatens to destroy humanity? Row Russ.
Birds.
Tau Teras.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Ooh, that's not bad.
Not bad.
I wish I'd call that one.
1932. We're talking Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which apparently is a little too literate for either of you. Okay, I give up. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
and the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello!
Hello!
How's it going, eh?
Hey! And welcome to episode 197, of the D6
97.
generation.
There's only 3 left, Russ.
I know. We should really figure that out.
There's only 3 left to 200.
Yeah, we're not stopping.
Will there be
not trying to shock anybody.
Yeah.
Will there be a 197B?
No, A. There will not. I'm Russ Wakeland.
Oh, there you go.
I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant. Didn't we already do this?
No.
My brain is...
Yes. And
I'm Teras Cassidy.
it's Teras! Oh my God! Worst intro ever. Teras, how are you, sir? Welcome back to the show. Always happy to have a Canadian on. Ever makes the show that much more polite. Really, it keeps us all honest.
Well, that's great to be here.
And as many of you may remember, Teras has been on the show before. He, of course, is the man, the myth, the legend behind the company that is Geek Nation Tours.
Nation Tour.
Of course, since we have Teras. Yes, since we have Teras in the house, we'd love to ask him what is up, what the latest news, what the latest hotness is with touring with geeks. And after
the latest hotness is he's starting his own empire. That's the latest.
Yes, there's all kinds. Geek Nation Tours is about more than just touring nowadays, apparently. So we're going to find all about that. And then later, we are going to dive in and do our patented D6G detailed review of the new miniature war game hotness, Konflikt with a K, Konflikt 47. Right
2 Ks. 2 Ks.
Yes. No, really?
Yes. 2 Ks.
2 Ks.
Konflikt.
I misspelled it. I have one C in there. That's incorrect.
Oh, Ross, you were trying to spell part of it correctly.
I was. It's
there?
Konflikt with 2 Ks. Double the killing.
Double the K, double the pleasure, double the fun, double the killing with Konflikt 40. Oh, it's got a... all right. So if it was Konflikt 41, that would have been great.
We will then talk more about that later, the alternate weird history, Wierd War history that is Konflikt 47. But up first, we should talk about the lost chapters, Craig. We just ran into Teras, at Dunkin' Donuts.
Not Hortons.
This is no. We were at Dunk's this time, right? I don't think we were at Hortons this time.
No.
Hortons was upstairs.
Teras forgot to twist the time and space knob.
Now, Teras, do you remember what we talked about when we were in Dunkin' Donuts?
We did. We talked about historicals versus not being able to do historicals.
That's right.
Alternative historicals.
Alternative history.
The effect of adding alternative to the historicals.
Yes.
As Craig likes to say, go ahead, Teras.
No, I was going to say our trepidation about historical gaming in general. But.
Yeah, it's Craig's definition of navel gazing. We did a little navel gazing on ourselves.
It was all navel gazing.
And asked ourselves why we don't enjoy historicals but do enjoy alternate history, Wierd War, for example. What appeals to us for about one and not the other. So if you're at all interested in that, and really who would be, you want to check out the Lost Chapters. and Craig, if you want to find the Lost Chapters, how do you go about doing that?
The best way for all involved is for you to go to patreon.com, find the D6 Generation page on there, or go to our website, the d6generation.com, and then click on through to the Patreon page. Do or do not watch the video, depending on whether you've eaten recently. And then for you to pledge a donation of $2 or more per episode, you will then unlock the library of Lost Chapter files.
Nice.
All of the greatness that is the Lost Chapters will be revealed to you in one massive flash of navel gazing.
Exactly right. So that's so great. But what's the time now for, Craig?
That's great now, but achievements in gaming.
That's right. And Achievements in Gaming, as always, is brought to us by our fine friends over at Patreon, who do indeed help us keep the lights on, get us to the various conventions and other things that we can help you guys cover here on the show. So thank you to all those hardworking folks who send a little money our way every month. So we appreciate that.
That's right. We do.
So now on Achievements, we like to talk about what we've been playing lately, first on sort of the non-electronic front. So Teras, as
have you been playing?
What have you been playing?
Yeah. Actually, I've been playing Escape The Aliens from Outer Space. I don't know if you guys heard about this one, but it's a
No, but that's a great name.
It is.
Is it? It is
Really
a
just
great name.
Trips
It's
off the
huge.
tongue.
It's huge. It's a huge name. It's from Osprey Games and Osprey Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced to it by the guys at Osprey at Adepticon, and I promptly bought it. It's kind of like a battleship alien game set in a universe similar to The Thing.
Huh.
Wow.
So you don't really you have a map, and you move through this map trying to get to the drop pods to get off this satellite in space. Some of you are aliens, some are you humans. The humans want to escape. The aliens want to eat the humans, and it's just such a great game that it feels like you'd make up this game kind of in the back seat with your brother, but only way better. You know, it's just got this straight, really strange. I've done this game before type of feel. So we played that. I brought it to camping. I brought it to a couple friends in just down in another city that we go visit every year, and it's just an awesome game. So we've been playing a lot of that. I've kind of fallen off the wagon with miniature gaming, which we usually do every Thursday, but this summer has been exceptionally busy, so I haven't been able to get that done. But yeah, check that one out. It's a really good game if you're into kind of who escape games and hunting down your enemy prey is it's a good game to take a look at.
Very cool. Very cool. Very good. Any other games, Karis? That's a neat one.
You know, that's about it for me right now. I haven't
touring
been
the world.
I know.
You're traveling toursman. That's
He's
awesome.
busy.
Craig, how about yourself?
Yeah.
Mine's going to be short also, because as the summer wound down and school blasted me in the face, I've really only. Oh wait, is John's birthday thing in here?
It is part of the John's birthday thing. Yes.
Oh, cool. Well, then we played a metric for our Canadian friends. Ton of Dragon and Flagon.
We did.
So that was fun.
That game was great.
With a whole new crew.
And everybody loved it. It was
Everybody loved it.
It was a big win. We played it back to back. They're like, let's play again. We did it right back to back.
Yep. That's
Really?
all we
That's
ended up.
awesome.
That's all we ended up playing. That
It is. It was great.
and then 2 games of Konflikt 47.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Both of them with
Who's that guy?
guy's name?
Right.
Oh, I forget. He's a bit of a doofus. Oh, it was Russ.
I did. Yes, that was fun. We'll talk more about Konflikt 47 a little later in the show, but we really
indeed. Yeah.
The second game in particular, I'm still thinking about that game, Craig. I had such a good time
me
with
too.
that.
It was
the
very
story was
cinematic.
awesome. The everything about it was great.
Yep.
So we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yes, indeed.
So quickly, my list is also not super long, but did get those 2 games of Konflikt 47 in. Got another game of Cult Express. So we've spoken about, I've mentioned Cult Express a couple times. Colt Express, excuse me. This is Colt like the horse. So, or the gun. This is the game that is a Old West themed train robbery where all players are playing various bandits and you are robbing a train, trying to get on the train, get away with all the best loot you can and get off the train. The neat thing about this game is all the 3-dimensional assembly. So there's actually a little 3-dimensional cardboard train, and you have little cowboy meeples that are moving around the train, and little tokens you're trying to collect with various bits of money. It is hilarious, good fun, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the future. It's actually very similar to Dragon and Flagon, actually, and the game predates it by quite a bit. But Colt Express is a great game, and if you like cowboys more than bar fights in medieval times, that's definitely one to check out. Of course,
it's kind of got like meeples for the cowboys and that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah, so there's little cowboy meeples you run around, and then there's a sheriff meeple up near the engine you got to watch out for. Cool. And then if you get the expansion, which I played with the expansion for the first time. So the expansion adds a stagecoach driving along next to the train with a shotgun toting meeple on the front of the stagecoach. It also adds a bunch of horse meeples that allow you to jump off the train, ride your horse up or down a couple cars, and jump back onto the train, or jump across to get on the stagecoach, grab a hostage, jump to the top of the stagecoach, punch the guy with a shotgun off the stagecoach, and then get more loot that way too. So a lot of cool And then, of course, you can engage in a gunfight while one of your cowboys on top of the stagecoach shooting the other cowboys on top of the train. It's just awesome. It's just good time. There's also a very hard-to-get expansion called the Time Traveling Car expansion, which actually adds a DeLorean, which also drives along next to the train.
That's awesome.
But that one's hard to find. That was a con exclusive, so you got to kind of look for that one. But the other one you can get still.
Wow, I've heard nothing but good about this game. Actually,
yeah,
people have told me about it.
We're going to have to review that in
like,
a future episode because it's a game worthy of our time, I think. Also, as I played a game of War Machine with my oldest daughter Rose again, and I scored a victory. I'm very excited about this.
Sort of sad that we're celebrating you beating up your daughter.
Look, she's beaten me more times than I've beaten her, so I got to take these things when I can get them.
Yeah.
So she is, even with the slightly nerfed Kaya rules, she's still, kicking butt and taking names there. But I managed to beat her. I've upgraded to Striker 2, and in the electrical armor. And so far, he's gotten really good on his random rolls to do the kill shot here. So, but we're really having a good time with that. I think we're going to try to play. They got a new league out now, which it's a narrative league, which characters sort of join your army and develop over the course of the league. So I think Rose and I are going to try that one because it looks pretty cool. Craig, if you want in on that, let me know.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to pull that off.
Oh, you got to play and stuff, yeah. What about modeling? Things we're building and stuff. Teras, doing any modeling lately?
Yeah, I've got kind of a lot of stuff that I've been kind of doing that I'm pretty excited about, actually. I know that we did our Frostgrave episode a while ago, and I recently picked it up again, and I read the rules again, and I totally fell in love with it. Just unbelievable right now. I'm just digging it and just so enamored with the system, and I started to build terrain again. It's been a long time since I built terrain. I had this whole bunch of armor cast actually terrain down in my basement for the longest time, and I just kind of forgot about it, actually, to tell you the truth. And I pulled it out, and I'm like, oh my god, I got all this stuff. So I had this great box of free terrain that's been kind of collecting dust in my basement. I started building that and a little bit of GW terrain with it. And recently, actually, Frostgrave, as you know, has random monster encounters. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I took all my old lead out from the 80s when I was painting for Dungeons and Dragons. And it was a blast, I'm telling you. It was one of the best things I've done hobby-wise for years. And all I did was taken all my old miniatures out and looked at how I painted in the old days and said, oh, I can use this model for a bear. I could use this model for a troll. And just took my whole collection, which was quite large, actually, and incredibly heavy because it's all lead. And just gathered all these miniatures that I can either repaint or use as is for Frostgrave. So it was really a fun adventure, miniature wise, painting wise, because I got to see all this stuff that I hadn't seen for years and reuse it. So I think that was one of the bigger things I did, other than of course reading the rules. What else? Jeez. I did a little Arena Rex building. Also, I'm working on an Age of Sigmar.
What did you build for Arena Rex?
Yeah, what'd you build?
What? Oh my God! You put me on the spot. What?
That was not my intention.
Rex, I forgot the Ludus. I always forget the
actual
Ludus.
Physical pain.
I was actually in the arena, and
you
was
got
crazy.
hit.
Yeah. It was awful. It really was.
Okay.
Magnus Ludus, Ludus Magnus.
Oh, the models or the terrain?
Yeah, I thought you were building terrain.
It sounds like
this is the model. This is the
okay.
model.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do. Have
there's all kinds of cool guys.
Yeah, actually, I do have something really cool. A friend of Brian is working on. I got to give him kudos. We when we were at Adepticon last year, the guys from Arena Rex had this mobile.
Playmobil.
Yeah,
Playmobil, right?
Yeah, right.
And I was actually one of the 3 guys that night that went and bought one on eBay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got mine from Greece of all things.
Okay.
And it actually they sent it, and it was great. It was that when I put that together, I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And then Brian said it, saw it, and he said, "I'll take that. That's my hobby." So project. So he's actually building that arena, painting it up. We're going to have some fans in the some historical models in the stands, waving and cheering and that kind of thing. Really looking forward to that, and it's going to be stupendous. Have you guys played that?
Yeah. I love the game. I have three Ludi.
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah. Check out my Twitter feed for the pictures of my Playmobil arena.
Oh, really? You have one too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
bought
picked
the other one
mine
that
up.
day.
Yeah. About a month after everybody we got back from AdeptCon. Oh,
Right.
actually, like a week after I ordered it. I got it back. I got it. And actually, I ordered one, and it said Playmobil Arena plus parts. And what it came with was 2 Playmobil Arenas. So I was willing to pay that much for one, and I got 2, except for the front gate. And then I went for $20 and got the front gate. So I had 2 full arenas, but I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with
Sell the second one, paint it up, and sell it for like $1,000. You probably could.
I would if I thought I had any chance of selling it for $1,000. But instead, I use how how it only comes with 2 sections of stands, Teras?
Yep.
I doubled mine, so I have 4 sections of stands. And then I painted them and themed them so each one is one of the 4 main Ludi. And I got Roman banners, so there's Roman banners that are painted up to be with the Ludi on those sections, and that's where we keep our favor dice.
That's perfect.
Yes, so
That's
you can play a 4-player game, and your favor dice go in your stands with all your flags and all your icons. And I really spent probably way more money than I should have. And I themed it all, so it's all lions. So there's lion statues and lion head statues and all over the place. And then I used the GW blood, and I got a little eyedropper spray thing, and I sprayed blood all over the place. So it looks like there's been a massacre inside the arena. So yeah, that's all on the Twitter feed. So at D6G Craig, check that out.
Yeah, I will definitely.
For inspiration. And if you're willing to give me $1,000, I'm just talking to the general listeners out there.
But they won't get the stands.
No, they won't get any stands.
That's awesome because this is how I look at this terrain. So that game is self-contained inside the arena, right? Mm-hmm. So you never have to buy another piece of terrain for the table.
Oh, but you're going to want to.
No, but you got to build the pits and the traps.
Yeah, you got pits. I have pits. You got pillars. I have braziers with fire in them.
Right.
I get that. You're going to want pieces, different things inside the arena. But you never have to. Yeah. You know what? You don't have to build more hills or another. A city fight or terrain or whatever. Yeah. You just build that one, and then you can alter it. Yep. You just build that one thing, and I think that's a big deal. You get this little bit of a universe to create, and all you have to do is create that universe in this one arena. I think it's a great thing.
And the game is a blast. It's so fast and fun.
It's so fun. I can't believe how fun it is. And all the characters seem to work. They work exactly as their card puts them out to be.
Right.
Like it's amazing the versatility about all how they work, how they fight on the thing. Mycon is my favorite. I mean
all
his pushing and everything like that, and his pose is like cheer for me. Yep. You guys get into the cheering? I really get into the cheering that on the game. I don't know why. Cheer for me. Maybe it's some psychological thing or something. I don't know.
It's a Canadian thing.
That's right.
Yeah, I want people to applaud. I do. Please applaud.
Well done, Teras.
Thank you.
Somebody applaud for Teras.
Right.
Love of God.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an awesome game, and it's so contained, like I said, and I like that. I'm getting to the point where I'm loving my games to be more contained than less contained. That's part of my love of Frostgrave. I mean, 10 miniatures is super. Even if you just paint 4 teams, you have that's still only 40 miniatures. It's tiny,
Right.
So.
Yep.
So anyway, so what else have I been up to? Age of Sigmar, I was saying. I'm painting my Frostlord on a Stonehorn.
Oh, nice.
I'm really going with the Beastclaw Raiders. But these are I've talked about these guys before. This is my Viking themed ogres, basically, is what it is. So I've really changed them around. Lots of Space Wolf stuff on them, and the commanders are gonna be themed. My fire belly, I have big horns on him. I've painted him a little bit of green, so he's Loki. Thor, he's gonna be the what is it, Gulgfag or something like that. The man eater, and then my guy on the Stonehorn will be Odin. So I'm really trying to get that Norse type of feel for it, and it's really turning out really cool. I'm really like that. What else?
Nice. That's a significant amount of stuff, dude. That's impressive.
Yeah, well, I haven't been having time to play as much as I'd like, but really digging my table again. For a time there, it was hard to get to the table. I always had seen that I had to put out a certain amount of miniatures for gaming, and now I'm just painting what I want, and my hobby has just come alive again. I just really enjoy it.
Nice, very very cool. Well, Craig, what about you, sir?
We've been playing this little game, Konflikt 47.
Yeah, all right.
And so I painted up some models for that. I painted up the entire U.S. starter for Konflikt 47. So that's the Sherman tank, which is the starters are awesome. It comes with a full plastic kit of a Sherman tank. Which I painted up with a normal turret and everything. Then, in addition, it comes with a really cool resin turret, which makes it the new Konflikt 47 tank with the Tesla lightning cannon on it. So I painted that all up. Then the Coyote Walker, which is an awesome little scout walker, bipedal scout walker. And then 25 infantry, 20 regular infantry that I broke down into a couple different squads with really cool. The models are great. The bolt action infantry plastics are phenomenal. I feel like I'm establishing my love of modeling with this stuff, because it just seems like a long time since I've been able to just go wild with a plastic kit. And these kits have all kinds of extra weapon options, and they have extra gear options and extra head options. And so I was able to make 2 8-man squads, and then a bazooka team and a sniper team, all from that one little set of 20 plastic models, which I've loved. We'll talk more about those later and how they've done in the game. And then 5 of the new Konflikt 47 heavy infantry models, which are basically World War II power armor. And it's awesome because the American guys look like they've been inspired by Iron Man, and they've got little electrical generators on their backs and little discs on their little glowy light discs on their chests, and I love putting those together. And then Gordon at Adler Hobby was kind enough to give us the really cool promo figure for buying the starters. And so I painted him. Actually, Russ gave me his, and I traded him a promo figure I had from Russ?
Antares.
Antares, Gates of Antares. So he's awesome because he's what's called a Paragon Project soldier. So he's actually head and shoulders taller than even the power armor guys, because they've genetically enhanced him. He's basically Captain America. And he's got an awesome Tesla rifle and a giant Tesla fist hand-to-hand combat thing that he carries. He costs a fortune, obviously.
Are you going to paint him up
I painted
Captain America, bars and stripes on his power fist or something?
That would have been awesome, though.
Well, even their standard paint job actually does. One of his shoulder pads is done like a big red, white, and blue eagle.
There you go.
And I didn't do that, but I think I'm going to go back and try to do that.
That's so cool.
He looking like he right now he looks exactly like you would expect a super soldier in World War II to look. He's got the gear and it's all the same colors and olive drab and the dark green for the equipment and stuff. So I think I'm gonna try to do something to Captain America him up a little bit. And then I got a little blister of HQ models. So I have a lieutenant and a medic and an artillery observer. I'll tell you how he did recently. And then the Americans, one of the strengths of their squads is that they can get a lot of bar gunners, the Browning automatic rifle gunners, but the sprue only has one. So it's really hard to give yourself the strength that the Army list allows. So I got a blister of 4 bar gunners from Black Tree models, which is another cool thing about playing in the in World War II era. Even though it's Wierd War, is that there's so many different manufacturers that you can go to. So Bolt Action and Warlord and Bolt Action don't have a lot of the individual pick and choose models for infantry, but there's, at least for the Americans anyway, I don't know about anybody else, but you can go to all these other third-party manufacturers who are all making 28mm World War II guys and get all kinds of other cool models. So I did that.
There's a bazillion out there too. Like you get to. I think that's a thing of beauty too. When you can go and shop around, you can say, you know what, this miniature really speaks to me, and grab it from some other company, and then bring it into the game. I think that's awesome because you have a multitude of company choices when it comes to World War II stuff. What about the Perrys? Do the Perry twins have anything World War II-ish? Do you know?
They have a box of plastic Germans, and they have a box of Desert Rat British 8th Army guys. Oh, okay. So I was briefly going to collect the British guys, and I was going to go with their box because it looks really cool. But when I decided I really wanted the Americans, I lost that ability. And War Games Factory did a 28mm plastic U.S. infantry box a few years ago, but it's like out of print, and you can find it online, but it didn't have any more weapon options than the bolt action one did. So I don't want to take a chance of there being the scale being a little bit off. So I didn't go with those. But yeah, so I painted all that up, and that was a lot of fun. I did the bases I have a 7/8 hole punch. Crafting hole punch that I got off eBay, and you can use any kind of plastic card you want, and you just punch the plastic card with that, and it actually comes out in a perfect size to fit on top of a GW base or on the inside of the new Warlord bases that have kind of a raised lip around the edge, and the 7/8 inch disc fits exactly inside that.
Yeah, check out the Twitter feed because Craig's I get some good pictures up there.
Yeah. You could use what's the green? Forget the
stuff?
company. No, there's a company that puts out plastic sheets for basically. I think.
Evergreen.
Evergreen, right?
Yeah,
you
they
could
do.
use cobblestone or all that stuff, and just punch it.
Yeah, and that's what I've done.
Wow.
And so it's really super fast. But the only thing is with the metal models, you have to cut off the metal bases. But that's not that hard. I have an awesome set of the offset cutters from Games and Gears that is absolutely perfect and has cut off all of my Gates of Antares models because I did the same thing with them. And it's a blast. And I always blame Russ because for years I didn't even do anything with my bases. I just had my models on a base and I didn't paint my base at all. If I was lucky, I painted it green, goblin green. And then Russ was like, you can't spend all that time on the models and leave the base like that. And ever since he told me that, I've gone nutty on my bases. So
he's completely correct.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If I disagreed, I wouldn't be spending all this time.
And that soundbite will be used forever.
But the circular punch with But the circle punch with the textured plastic is great. You can do sci-fi with I've got diamond plate stuff that I use with the sci-fi, the cobblestone stuff that I'm using with the Warlord, with the World War II stuff, and it's really neat and it's super easy especially with the plastic models. So that's been really exciting. Awesome. And then I've been told to go down to the Battle Bunker for many, 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 many years down in Malden, Massachusetts. And I finally went down there, and they have rows of the old plastic toys we used to get when we were little. Mm-hmm. And you'll recognize all kinds of cool plastic tanks and everything. But on top of that, they've got all kinds of really cool learning and science things. And I got their Cape Canaveral set that they have. And it's actually all these cool, weird 1950s looking sci-fi buildings that I then just painted dark olive and they made awesome little buildings for Conflict 47. So really super easy terrain, really fast. So yeah, so that was.
And the scale was okay?
Well, no, they don't look like buildings. They just like little generators and things.
Oh,
they're just little. There's an observatory and all kinds of cool stuff like that. But
for like a Tesla type of generator.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really, really neat. And there's like a set of 3 tanks that have like pipes on them, and just really cool for like $12. For a little bag of old toys. So that was awesome. That was phenomenal. Russ, why don't you tell us a little bit about your modeling?
Well, so I got into this whole airbrushing thing, Teras.
He did.
That's very good.
I acquired an airbrush at Gen Con. I think I mentioned this maybe last episode, and I started using it. So Rose and I started experimenting with it, and then Rose and I did a special extra lost chapter of us discussing our initial thoughts on the airbrush. One thing I should mention: one of our listeners emailed me and said, "Russ, you haven't talked about airbrush safety as you learn things," and that's a good point. And one of the things I didn't mention, I don't think I was clear about, was a couple things about airbrushes you should be aware of. One, you're using compressed air. Just throwing that out there. So all those sorts of things with it, whenever you're dealing with compressed air, is important. But the other thing you should know, and more importantly, is that whenever you're in a enclosed space with particulate matter, right, that's bad generally for your lungs. And as someone who grew up with asthma, I really appreciate these sorts of problems. So when Rose and I initially experimented with this, I was in my garage with the door wide open next to the door, basically sitting outside essentially, doing this. And it was fine. If I was going to go inside, though, I would definitely get, and actually one of our listeners, Brian, sent me a great link to some great hoods, portable little hoods you can basically use anywhere that basically filter the air, and they're designed for airbrushing. So I might, if I get into it enough and start doing it enough, I might invest in that. It's like $80, which is a little pricey, but it would also be great for like priming indoors too. With the airbrush. So I'm thinking that'd be a great thing for the winter here in New England or really rainy days. But so we practice with that. The other option is get a mask also when you do this. Really, I've been surprised. So it's kind of like, I think that I'm still learning. But what I did to learn was Rose and I initially started off by doing some things we had lying about that needed to be painted. So one of the things I was hoping the airbrush would work out for was I hate painting large flat surfaces with a brush. Brushes work great. All my tricks and techniques that allow someone of my lack of artistic skill to paint models that look halfway decent usually involve things like dry brushing and picking out raised surfaces and inking and things like that. And when you have a large flat surface, none of those tricks really work. And then I run into trouble with, having to do multiple thin coats so you don't get brush strokes on like the side of a tank or on a horse, right? So my real hope with an airbrush was I could cover those things quickly. And sure enough, I was able to do my horses really easily for my blazers. We did some real quick and easy work on some War Machine objectives. Rose base coated or shifting stones. Those were easy. Priming was dirt simple. I picked up some primer. That was really easy too. And then I started getting adventurous. And so like Craig, I assembled the entire starter box, or most of it. I didn't quite assemble all the infantry, but I almost everything in the starter box, plus some more stuff. So I got, in the starter box, I got 2 squads of 6 plus 2 HQ squads of 2 all assembled. I got the new vampires, 2 of those guys assembled, their medals. I got 3 of the werewolves assembled. I got the heavy infantry for the Germans all assembled. And I got the German walker from the starter box and the German tank, which shoots gravity beams, which kind of neat, assembled, and all the zombies. And then the night before, I primed them all with P3 primer, just because I happened to have it lying around. So I sprayed them all. That took me about 15 minutes to do all that with primer. Then I let them dry overnight. And one of the nice things about airbrush primer I've discovered is they dry really, really quickly. So one of the things Rose really liked is you can go from metal model to primed to base coating in like about 15 minutes, which is very nice compared to normal primer.
Because the
go ahead.
airbrush is actually helping you dry it at the same time.
Right, because you're putting on just enough paint, right? So and then what I did though the next day was I'm like, okay, here we go. So I got this. One other thing I did about airbrushing that I've learned is that everybody stressed how important it is to get the right mixture of paint to thinner. And since we're using water-based acrylics, you can use water to thin, which is nice. Although I've been told there's better thinners out there than water, but I was using water. However, I was worried I'd get the consistency wrong. It's supposed to be like skim milk, and I was like, I'm going to mess this up. I didn't want to be fighting the consistency and fighting the brush and learning everything. So I actually bought a small pack there are a couple different companies that make airbrush, what they call airbrush ready paints, which in theory are paints that you can take right out of the bottle, drop them right in the airbrush, and go. I've also been told, though, by hardcore airbrushes, you always thin any paint you get. But I was like, I'm just going to try this then. At least I'll be close enough, right? So I got the Badger paints. I've also been told that the Vallejo Model Air paints are fantastic, so I might try those next. And they did work perfectly. I got them out. I got good spray coverage, and they had a light gray that I really liked because it basically looks like the gray color from classic German tanks, you know. So I went through and I base coated all my models, and I was immediately impressed with how it was pretty easy to keep the paint where you wanted it. Like I was kind of worried it'd be kind of like a spray can, but you really can. I was able to sort of base coat the coats of the Germans and their pants and their hats while still leaving their faces black, unpainted, and their guns unpainted, which I was figuring the whole model would be sprayed gray, but it wasn't, which I was really pleased with. So I did all the German. I base coated everything basically gray, including the werewolves. Go ahead, Teras.
This is the question.
Yeah,
this is using your normal nozzle, like it's not a
normal.
It's fine detail nozzle. It's a normal nozzle,
it's the
right?
Patriot 105, which is the sort of the intro decent airbrush. It's not super fine, but I base coated all those models and the tank, and everything in there in an hour. Which I was like, holy crap! That for me, that's fast. And what I was really pleased was the tank. So the tank and the walker particularly. So the walker, I went with the technique. I wanted to see if I can get nice, even coverage on all the panels, like it was brand new off the factory floor. No problem. No brush strokes, look perfect. With the tank, I experimented with pulling out and in as I painted the tank to give it sort of like, especially around the vents and stuff, to give it sort of like that, not sort of dirty look. And I really like how the tank came out too, actually. So both those. And what the best part was though. I could, painting something as large as a tank like that, base coating, it usually takes a lot of time, again, to avoid brush strokes and everything. No time at all, like boom, boom, right through these things. I don't think I would ever paint a vehicle model again without an airbrush. It was like a life-changing moment. But then go ahead, Teras.
What were you? This is after the intimidation level, right? And I just got a airbrush too, and I think there is a level of intimidation
there definitely is,
that you're going to screw it up, that it's going to be cloggy, you're going to have to clean it a lot, but really it's just do it and you'll figure it out.
The other magic part,
clean your brush as much as you can. That's
the other trick, right? So the big trick is, I think getting the pre-mixed paints is probably the right start because it's just one less thing to worry about. The other thing, you're right, Teras, the other thing that the Badger gentleman recommended in every video I recommended was get good airbrush cleaner, and most of the manufacturers make those. And the trick is run the cleaner through your brush until it comes out clear. And if you do that between every color and when you're done for the day, you pretty much don't have to disassemble your airbrush. It pretty much just stays clean. It's just like a regular brush. If you clean your regular brush after you use it every time, you'll be fine. If you don't, you're going to either destroy the brush or you won't destroy the airbrush. You have to disassemble it, and it becomes a giant pain in the butt because you might bend the needle and then you have problems. So try to clean it. Then Teras, I'm like, I'm going to try to go crazy now. So then what I did, and here's where I started getting into trouble. So then I was like, well, this is where I started discovering that the whole paint thinning team, I see why they say that. So then I went and I wanted to get some color on my vampires. And the vampires, I wanted to paint them a dark red, and then I wanted to airbrush like a pink in areas and sort of get that blended wing. They have these very membrane wing type things. And I was figuring, if you could do a light coat with a dark coat, you'd get that sort of blending you get with an airbrush sort of naturally. And I thought it'd look pretty cool. So I base coated them red, and I immediately noticed the red was coming out thicker than the gray was, and I was having trouble controlling the volume. And I think because even though it's a pre-ready-made airbrush paint, some of them are just like when you paint with paints out of a pot with a brush, some paints coat better in one coat than others, Similarly, some of these paint colors are slightly different mixtures, and the airbrush is very sensitive to the consistency of the paint. And so that was an example where I probably should have thinned the red, right? So I'm learning, and this is why I was comparing it to dry brushing earlier. So when you first start dry brushing, for all you dry brushers out there, and the first time you do it, you get a little too much paint on the brush, and you hit the pants, and it just covers the whole, and you're like, crap. Or you go back to dry brush some more, and then you get a little too much water in it, and you don't dry it all the way. Or then finally you get that moment where it's just perfect, and you're dry brushing, and you see oh, this is exactly how it's supposed to work. And then you clean your brush, and you get a bad dry brush again. But with enough practice over time, right? You learn when you rub it on the towel, you're like, oh, it's perfect. I'm going to be fine. That's how the airbrush is, right? So first time you do it, you don't have the right mix in there or whatever, and it splatters out, and you get like almost like a speckle effect, like crap. And the next time you do it, there's barely anything coming out, and you're like, it's going to take forever. And then at some point, you find that magic thing where you got just the right distance, and you're controlling it, and you're hitting the raised surfaces and not the deep surfaces. And you're like, this is perfect. And then you kind of lose it again. But I'm finding now, the more I play with it, with practice, I'll get this down. But what I was pleased with was just after doing this like 1.5 hour session, I already had seen my improvement, and I could see what the potential of the tool. So I'm really, and the vampires came up pretty good, I thought. So I'm pleased with where I'm going with this, is what I'm saying.
But isn't that the same experience with dry brushing? I mean, I still screw up dry brushing every once in a while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the first time you do dry brushing, you're like, oh my God, this is super easy. I get it now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And airbrush is the same way, right? Mm-hmm. You just, all of a sudden you're doing it and you're like, now I understand why this is awesome.
And you know what's funny too is when I was doing the vampires, and I think Craig noticed this when I came into the store, in my head I had like, the airbrush blending you see in the magazines, right? And I'm like, it doesn't look like that crap, and I was really disappointed with it. But then it was on the table and I was playing Craig, I'm like, those look pretty damn good. And then I realized, well, it's just like anything else. I'm never going to be at that level, or at least if I don't, like I was expecting the airbrush to magically work like someone who'd been airbrushing 50 years. It's like, that's not going to happen. It still takes skill, but it was sort of the same level of success I'm able to achieve in my other painting skill, which is I'm really happy with how it looks on the table, right? And it's a cool, different kind of effect that I wouldn't use on every model I paint, but for organics and for vehicles, man, it's the way to go. And for base coating, lots of their models. Because now with my German infantry,
awesome.
I can just run through the German infantry now, do their faces, do their hands, pick out a couple bits here and there, and boom, they're done. So I'm really pleased with it. It's definitely going to be a tool I'm going to leverage going forward. And I am now no longer worried about painting like things like my Colossal and my Battle Engines for War Machine, because those things are so intimidating with so many flat surfaces. So very excited.
Lose the fear, though. That's the big thing. Yeah,
that's
right?
the thing.
Just totally lose the fear.
And it is kind of pricey. You think about it, the airbrush kit was $150 for me, and now I bought some paints, it's another $20, and if I get this little vent thing, that's another $80. It adds up really, really quick. So it's not a cheap set of tools. But if you do find yourself doing a lot of vehicles and stuff, like the speed at which, you guys listen to the show regularly, how short my model list normally is. And if you look at this time, for the same normal period, I got a lot more stuff that's wildly through it. So, for me, that was a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. So I'm pleased with it.
Awesome.
So there you have it. So that's modeling. Phew, a lot of cool stuff happening there. I'll keep you guys up to speed. And once I learn a little more about the airbrushing, I'm sure we'll do a segment on in more detail on how this is working and everything. Because I know people are asking me about that now, and I'll keep you guys up to speed on how it's going. So what about other stuff like books, TV, movies? Teras, what have you been watching, reading?
Well, I watched a lot of DC movies this summer. I watched just recently Suicide Squad, and I rewatched Batman vs Superman. I watched the extended version of that, and I actually really liked that show. I don't know, there's a lot of hate with that show, but I really enjoyed it a lot. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, I didn't care for that one, but I did enjoy Suicide Squad more than I thought.
Yeah.
Batman. I'll get back to Suicide Squad because I think that's an interesting show to talk about. But Batman versus Suicide Squad was almost intellectual in its slowness. Like it was just it was slow, and you got to go. I think if they would have almost prepared you for its slowness, I think it would have been more well received. I knew it was slow. So the second time I watched it, I actually enjoyed it much, much more. And the extended version I really liked because it was actually even more slow, which is really a strange thing to say. But I really liked it a lot. There was a lot of images in there that I thought were almost Watchmen-esque. Just some of the images that were shot were really good. Just had a really good vibe to it. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I really dig it. But I brought my daughter to Suicide Squad, actually, and it was just her and I. Mom was gone for the evening, and we talked about it for hours after. It was really good. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I liked it.
I was a little bit scared when they did all the intros to the characters. I was just like, oh man, this is going to be just this new origin story thing. But they did those really quickly and really interestingly, I think. And the music was awesome, and every character was efficiently cringeworthy that you wanted them to succeed, but you're really not happy about liking everybody on that squad.
Yeah.
And the Joker was terrible in that type of way. Like, just totally made me feel kind of uncomfortable. It
was funny. I was disappointed in the Joker a little bit. I don't know why.
Oh, really?
He didn't work for me as much as other Joker actors have.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the Joker.
But I liked.
What about the braces?
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it more.
You mean the grill?
The grill, right?
Braces.
Yeah, the grill.
He was all pimp daddied out, is what he was.
Which I guess is okay. But,
and I've heard that's like that. There's a legitimate comic version that's like that, and so I'm not saying it's not like the comics. I just didn't enjoy that particular iteration of that character.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
I like the show. I think the show could have been better. I mean, there was more they could have done with it, but I liked it a lot. I did enjoy it, and I think the acting definitely saved the day. There were some great actors in there doing some really cool bits, so I liked it a lot.
Harley was amazing.
She was awesome. So was Will Smith. I liked Will Smith in that role too.
Will Smith. Yeah. Oh, I'm actually a big fan of Will Smith, to tell you the truth. So he wasn't hard for me to be pleased with, but Harley did an awesome job. She was again super cringeworthy, but at the same time, you wanted her to succeed. So I think that's the whole point of the Suicide Squad, right? You're going to love-hate type of relationship as much as you possibly push that. So I really like that. I also saw Deadpool recently and loved that. That was awesome. Some cringeworthy scenes in that, but and definitely a watch on your own without your kids type of show. Yes. I did not watch that with my daughter. As I hope you
good idea.
And I was very happy with that choice. So that was a really good show. Really enjoyed that. What else? I released my Adepticon tour, and that's almost sold out now.
Wow,
so that's
nice.
That's fast.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. That's good.
Yeah, really excited about that. It's going to be a hell of a year. I changed the itinerary of the tour a little bit, and it's just going to be really awesome. Started a new book. I don't know. Can we start? Does it have to be finished? Or
nope, absolutely not.
Okay. No, you can start. Yeah.
I just started Empire of the Imagination by Michael Whitwer, I think his last name is. That's Gary Gygax's biography. And so it is, for any Dungeons and Dragons fan, it's an amazing read.
I'll have to check that
out. It's just stellar. Again, Osprey, just a great read. Makes you want to read more. It's a page turner. Most biographies kind of aren't like that. It's got a lot of story to it, a lot of emotion to it. I think that anybody that's interested in Gary Gygax, you should read it. If you're an old style Dungeons and Dragons guy, old fart like I am, you're gonna love it.
Awesome.
You're just buy it. Right. I read a whole bunch of woman hero comic books lately because I'm getting my daughter into comic books. She's really digging it. I read the new Wonder Woman. Really liking that version of things. Also read the Huntress and Power Girl. Really digging that. It was really, really good. Did some Fantastic Four and Ulrich of Melbourne, Stormbringer. That was really good too. Audible wise, I'm really digging the Grimm Company by Luke Skull. Did you ever hear that?
What's that about?
It's almost kind of Warhammer fantasy battle type of feel to it, like a really grim, dark, hence the name, I guess, grim, dark type of fantasy setting. But it is super adult. They swear all the time. The narrator is awesome. He's got a whole bunch of different accents for each different guy. Someone's from Scotland versus someone from London, and just really, really cool. I definitely recommend it if you want kind of a darker fantasy, and it's just such a good listen. He's a brilliant storyteller, that guy. So yeah, awesome. That's almost done that, and looking forward to the second book. Very good.
Oh, cool. Well, Craig, what about you, sir?
Well, let's see. I'm going to start with some video games.
What? Yeah. Nice.
We got Reese got the Wii U for his birthday. Might have mentioned that. Yeah. And he got Mario Kart 8. and and he loves it. So, and I really enjoy it. So I've been playing it. We probably end up playing, and he probably knows this more than we told him he was going to be able to play it because I enjoy it so much.
There you go.
So
I play that with my daughter too. Actually,
Mario Kart is a classic. Yeah.
It is.
It's a lot of fun. I love it. And of course, he plays it so much he's unlocking all kinds of people.
Right. Look at you at Pokemon Go and now Mario Kart. You're
well,
regular
Pokemon
Nintendo.
Go thankfully lasted less than a week, so
that's
I'm
good.
glad that he got bored with that because I just soon get that off my phone.
Yeah, there you go.
But and then Nintendo Land, which is what the Wii U comes with, is this awesome little thing that's got all these little mini games in it.
Is that the board game one where you move around and you play mini games?
Yeah, and you can play all these different, and they're all themed to connect with Nintendo properties, but they're all their own unique little games. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, for instance, Mario Chase is this one where the Wii U has a tablet and it's got controllers that control the games on your TV. And they've got several games that leverage that by, for instance, the Mario Chase. If you're Mario, you're looking at the tablet and you can see where everybody is. And you're running through a maze trying to hide from the other two, and I don't have any of the names down, but we have 3 controllers, so all 3 of us can play. 2 people are trying to chase down the third player, and the third player sees everybody, so he's able to avoid them, but the other 2, all they can see is what their characters would actually be able to see in the maze.
Oh wow!
So it's awesome. Cool. So you're running around and you're like trying to get up onto like high ground so you can look around and it's a lot of fun. And so it's really neat that they leverage that in that way. And it has a tournament system where you can say there's 3 people and you want to play a tournament, and it asks you, do you want to play a 15-minute tournament, 30-minute tournament, 45 minutes, or half hour, an hour, and that judges how many games you play. And then it gives you choices, so it's like, okay, hand the controller to Dad, and I get the controller, and then it gives me 4 options for pairings and for games. Mm-hmm. So I choose one, and we do that, and then I hand the tablet to the next person, and they choose pairings. And if I choose a game that's only a 2-player game, the person that's out actually says who they think is going to win, and they can get points that way. So everybody's involved the whole time. So it's really, really fun. It's a blast. I finished my reviewing of Black Sails for my pirate inspiration. Arr. It's awesome. The show is just 100 times better binge watching the whole thing.
Really?
Because it really just you see the pieces of the later events already in the characters, and you see the foreshadowing, and there's all kinds of really cool stuff. There's a lot more depth to it than I ever noticed when I was watching it episode by episode.
Is it now on Blu-ray or whatever? Can you get the first season? I'm
sure. Well, they just finished the 3rd season, so I'm almost positive you have to be able to get probably at least the first 2 seasons somewhere, but I do know they're not on Netflix.
It's digitally on Xbox Video and Apple and iTunes.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
So it's got to be available. Awesome. Yeah. Still watching Killjoys and Dark Matter, and Killjoys really kicked it up a notch with their overall story. So I'm liking that. But that does not take away from my enjoyment of Dark Matter, which I think is still rocking the second season.
They're not mutually exclusive. It's just you need to understand that
you
Killjoys
are the one
is the best
frames it. Yeah, in a
sci-fi show on television today.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Killjoys. Yes.
Yeah,
really? Because I saw it and I was like, I don't know. And
just watch.
There's some kind of cool
2 episodes,
vibe,
Teras.
but
just watch 2 episodes. You'll be sold.
Really? Any 2? Or
pretty much any. Well, there is a story.
Any 2 random episodes.
I recommend the first and the second because there is a story that does progress. So it's not like Star Trek. Where you can
but that story is not that relevant in the first season.
No, but there's character development. Like there'll be this random guy
absolutely.
That's not there.
It's there. It's just not like you're not seeing some grand story until the second season.
I don't know. If you watch the first season again, you'll see similar things you described to Black Sails. There's a strong building over arc. There's a cool universe.
I'm not saying it's not there.
On.
I'm just saying it's not worth watching.
It's got a really cool universe. Teras, you'll love it. Just watch it. 2 episodes. 1 and 2, back to back.
Listening to Joe Abercrombie's new series, The Shattered Sea.
It's not that new. It's been out since 2014.
Well, it's new to me.
Okay, is it good?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, good. I got
Half a King is the first one. They're short. They're like half the size of his other books.
Now, are these? Is this like fantasy? Is it naval? Is it?
It is fantasy.
All right.
Well, it's I don't know. It's totally 100% fantasy. It's almost like historical. There's no magic involved. There are elves, but they're all dead, and then you find out that maybe they weren't elves.
Spoilers, dude! Come on, I gotta read this.
Awesome, cool stuff.
Man.
No, you figure that out early on. You're like, everybody's talking about elf buildings and elves and elf metal, and right in the first chapter, you're gonna be like, "What's up with the elf thing?"
Elves are a dying race. Check.
No, they're not the dying race. They're not there. They're like they're like mythological.
Ooh, okay.
And so really enjoying that. I'm into Half a World, the second book now. The only thing is it does that thing where there's only one point of view character in Half a King, and he's not a point of view character in the next book. So you're kind of like, I really fell in love with that guy, and he's still there, but you're now not seeing it from his point of view. He's kind of there sometimes, not there sometimes, which is cool because you're seeing whole new avenues and angles on the whole story. But
so the whole Half a King is one point of view, like
yes.
the one character's point of view.
Yep.
Cool.
And then Half a World is two characters' points of view.
Oh wow!
Neither of which are the first guys.
In Half a Word, has he had 3?
I don't know. I haven't started listening to that yet.
Interesting.
And then I went back and continued to try to read Fortune's Whelp by Bennerson Little, which is the pirate book that we talked about when we did the Blood and Plunder segment with Mike. And I'm still enjoying it. It's a very affected writing style. Like, I'm going to write like they used to speak and talk in the olden times kind of thing. So that makes the story a little less accessible for me. When there's action and there's cool stuff going on, I'm reading it like at a crazy pace and I'm zipping along, and then it'll get to a smaller, more intrigue focused section, and I'm just like, those sections kind of read a little bit like a Wikipedia entry. I'm like, okay, yeah, oh yes, that's what the real name was, and that's what, and that's how they really rode their horses back then. I'm like, I don't need that much detail to, and in fact, I prefer to skim over that kind of detail. But it's still, the story has still got me, and I'm enjoying it. And then I just wanted to talk very, very briefly. So all of our friends now have watched Stranger Things, and we've all had that moment when during Stranger Things, the government agents bring out the cardboard boxes full of toys from the basement. And our friend Pete, when he watched that, went, "Oh my God, what's in my basement?" And he went downstairs and he found all of his old lead models. Exactly as Teras said.
Demogorgon,
And he brought them over to Russ's brother's house for his birthday, and we just pawed through them all, and we were reminiscing. And oh my God, the Dragon of the Month from Grenadier, and
I totally went through all that stuff.
It was great, and so it was just a lot of fun. And if you are old like us and you have these things in your basement, dig them up and enjoy the reminiscences, because that was a lot of fun. Exactly. Russ, what about you?
Well, real quick, my list is short. Enjoying Killjoys. So last episode, I think Craig's been mentioning Preacher for a bit, and then our guest also recommended Preacher, and he was a big fan of the comics. So I started watching Preacher, and it was funny because Nicole and I are out. We're hungry for a new show. We're all caught up on our stuff, and we're like, let's give this Preacher thing a try. Literally 15 minutes in, Nicole's like, "This is awesome," and pretty much from the point of the vampire on the plane was pretty much when we were sold at that moment.
Yeah.
And the way that whole thing happens is just awesome. So, if you have not watched the show, The Preacher, just watch the show, The Preacher. It is fantastic. Teras, have you seen this yet?
No, but is this the comic book based one? Like
yes,
wow, that's got to be awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome.
Really? Does it follow that whole timeline?
I don't know the comic, so I can't tell you how closely it follows the comic. Our third chair last time, Chris, I think it was. He said yes, it did. So, but
no. What he said was that it was like a prequel.
Oh, prequel, right. It predates it.
Yeah.
Really? He said the way it seemed to him was that the final episode of the TV show
Sets up the
kind of like
comic.
sets up the beginning
Right.
of the comic.
Yes.
Wow. Is it going to be continued into that? Like, is it a one shot type of deal?
No, they just got renewed, I think.
Wow, because it's mildly well, I don't even know if mildly. It is disturbing in a lot of ways. Like I think
there was some really disturbing parts of the TV
yeah.
show.
It's Kurt, by the way. Kurt Parr. I forgot. Totally blanked his name. So Kurt was the one that recommended it, and Kurt also knew the comic book thing. Yes, it is. It's very disturbing, but in a very it's dark comedy, right? So it's disturbing, but it's also hilarious. And I would say the best actress in the show is the woman who played the flower dress lady from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
She is in this, and I don't know her name, but she is in this show also in a completely different role, and her character is fantastic. She, and then the vampire character is the guy from Misfits, the British version of the superhero show, the British version of Heroes, essentially. He was fantastic in that show and left it kind of early, and he is awesome in this role, playing a sort of an Irish vampire. He's hilarious. So yeah, loving The Preacher. Also, real quick, I'm way behind on my book listening because basically, I'm not going to get into this in the show, but I'm a total political junkie, and so this whole political season has me listening to nothing but politics and following all that. So I'm not reading any of my books. So I'm like, if you're not hearing me talk about books, that's why, because I listen to all my audiobooks. But I have had a chance to play Battlefield 1. So the Battlefield 1 beta just came out on Xbox One, and this is perfect timing because we're all right now into Konflikt 47, and Battlefield 1 is the Battlefield saga series of games, but it puts you in World War I, not 2. And what's cool about it is the multiplayer beta came out, and basically the way it respawns dead guys is awesome. You basically can jump back in anywhere in the battlefield. So like if someone's driving an old World War I era tank, you can respawn right into one of the turrets. Or if there's a biplane flying around, you can respawn into the tail gunner, or you can respawn. And then it's great because there's like guys on horses running by. You can be on a horse and cut a guy down with your sword and then get shot by a cannonball. It's just crazy, crazy fun.
So is it like you're playing online and you're one of a bunch of people who are real people who are playing? Oh,
yes.
Cool.
So it's like, exactly. So it's like the Allies versus the Germans, and you've got all the different things happening, and 1 minute you're running through a trench, and the next minute you're getting shot, and then
those wacky Germans.
It was fun. So that's a lot of fun as well. So enjoying that also. So I think that's achievements.
Wow.
Is that achievements?
That's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Achievements.
So here's the final score. Ripley has 147 victory points. Hicks has 132. I have 117. And Hudson has 87. That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. What the frick are we going to do now? Put the game away.
And now it's time for us to talk about our favorite army transport company, Battle Foam.
I know, man. The very first thing I do, Kirk, whenever I get into a brand new miniature war game like Konflikt 47, I immediately look for my foam and discover I need more. And that's the way as I go is Battle Foam. And what I like about them is, again, not only, here's the thing. They have deals with all the major manufacturers. So if you need it, they probably already have it. But the best part is, if they don't, or you've got wacky stuff like brand new Wierd War walkers or something, or really tall things, or strangely shaped things, or you're doing all kinds of crazy conversions with guys lying down, guys really wide, vampire wings shooting everywhere, no problem, because you can go right to their cool foam construction utility there and design your very own foam cutout trays really quickly and easily yourself, and then click a button and boom, they show up in your door.
Yep, absolutely, Russ. And it's awesome because no matter what you're putting in, you're going to find some battle foam for it. And there's a bag size for every army size you're looking for. So we're starting early on Konflikt 47. We got smaller forces. So I've got a smaller bag. And then I've got bigger bags. And then I've got bigger bags. And, of course, I need foam for them all. So it's really an awesome way for you to transport safely these models you are spending a fortune on, and an eternity in painting and basing and all the other cool stuff you're going to do to make your army exactly what you want it to be and get it where you want it to go.
That's right. So check it all out at battlefoam.com.
Whoa.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, now I'm relegating to announcing this pap.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, it's time for another App of the Ep. And you know, longtime listeners may remember that I am a big fan. One of my favorite kind of games to play on the console are what I like to call couch co-op or couch competitive, or what most people call local multiplayer games. These are games that don't require you to set up a LAN, don't require anything fancy. Just you and a few of your friends, maybe your kids, maybe a couple of your good friends, maybe even your wife, your rest of your family, sitting around. Everybody grabs a controller in front of the same television and plays some kind of game all together at the same time. Usually a lot of fun ensues and hilarity ensues, and you just feel like you're really having a social experience. It's probably the closest thing you can get to a board game experience with a video game system, which is why I like these so much. And so that's why I get so excited about these. And there's a brand new one that is particularly evil because it combines this sort of idea of couch co-op, but with some of the evilness that is found in some of the most insidious of board games like Diplomacy in sort of a weird way. And that game, of course, is Overcooked. This game, I actually discovered this. I'm a big fan of the Penny Arcade comic, and I was reading this strip, and they were talking about how if you want to find a way to quickly hate your friends, hate your loved ones, hate your wife, play Overcooked. And so that sounds like my kind of game. So I fired it up. We had a great time. So this game is sort of, the premise of this game is kind of like, for those of you who are familiar with games like Diner Dash, made popular on Nintendo DS or iOS mobile devices, where basically you're a cook in a kitchen or sometimes a waitress, and you're taking orders, and you're basically doing the tasks required to make these people in the restaurant happy. But generally it's a bunch of multitasking. So 1 minute you're cleaning the dishes, the next minute you're pairing they're grabbing the order, the next minute you're seating other people in the restaurant. Well, this game Overcooked, it takes this to the next level with up to 4-player co-op, and you're all cooks in the same kitchen trying to fill orders. And the game starts off really easily. We're just making soups. Customers come in. You don't have to worry about seating the customers like in Diner Dash, but in this game you are looking at the orders, chopping the food, prepping the food. So maybe a soup order comes in and it requires 3 onions. So you take the onions out of the bin, you take them to the cutting board, you chop the onions up, you put them in the soup pot. The soup pot gets cooked. You pick up the soup pot, you pour it in a bowl, you take the bowl over to the service up counter, and you go back to making more. But the catch here is that there's more than one of you in the kitchen, and you're all supposed to be trying to work together. And as the game progresses, the kitchens get divided in such a way that no one person can do all the tasks. So you have to do teamwork. So, for example, some players will be trapped on one side of the kitchen with access to the piles of food, the food boxes, but they won't have access to the cutting boards. Someone else have access to the cutting boards, but they won't have access to the cooking equipment, etc. And so what you got to do is one player's got to grab the fruit, put it on the counter. The other player's got to take the fruit from the counter, cut it up. Anyway, I know it sounds kind of like Trading the Mediterranean, but it's a lot more fun than that. It's actually hilarious. The environments are crazy fantasy sort of environments where you're driving on 2 trucks that are occasionally split up, occasionally come together. Sometimes you're preparing food on a ship that's rolling, which makes the table slide around, on ice, all kinds of crazy environments that make it even that much more fun. So check this one out. It's a great one for your friends and your family, all local co-op, and that's Overcooked on the Xbox One and other platforms.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that. More just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey guys, so as you know, we have Teras on the show, and when we have Teras on the show, we like to get in touch with Teras and our inner Canadians and find out what is exactly going on behind the massive global empire that Geek Nation Tours has become.
Indeed.
It's got its giant very polite Canadian tentacles into all sorts of different things nowadays, which is a tie-in with that strange tentacle anime over in Japan, where he goes now also.
No.
And
see,
That it.
yeah.
what?
Yeah. What? Sorry?
I think.
That is true, but our tentacles are not as evasive as some.
See,
That's
this tentacle
very
thing
true.
is dangerously close to not family friendly. So let's move right along.
Yeah, what? Tentacles.
Okay, so anywho,
So, Teras.
yes.
Yes, sir.
What is going on with Geek Nation Tours? Give us some, what are some of the cool evolutions that what's going on? Like, when we first joined you many years ago, you were up and coming. You had multiple things going on. You were taking boring normal people to boring normal places and occasionally going to cool places with geeks. What's going on?
Right. Well, the company really has changed a lot over the last little bit, over the last years. We when we first started, it was all about going to cool places and bringing geeks together and everything. But now we really try to stress the community part of the whole thing. So no matter where we go, what we discovered is that everybody, all my tours, first of all, are geared to a specific niche. Like they're Star Trek fans, or they're gaming fans, or miniature war gaming fans, or Battlefield fans, and everybody is really very much into that one thing, which is really makes it easy for me to bring people together. And now it's really a lot about community, like community building. That's really what Geek Nation Tours has kind of evolved into.
So how do you do that?
We're about where we go. We try to create our own mini communities within the communities that we go to.
Oh, cool. So how does that work? Like, so are you talking about the community of travelers themselves?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. So I just came back from my Star Trek convention and my Star Trek tour. Now, when you go on a normal tour on go to castles or whatever, people are kind of generally interested in castles of Europe, but they just want to go to Europe and have castles kind of as a side gig. But when I do my Star Trek tour, everybody's a Trekkie. Everybody gets all the Trek jokes. Everybody gets all the strange conversations, and everybody is right into it. So everybody can relate to each other. Same vocabularies, same mindset. Everybody has the same way of thinking, and everybody has the sense that they're with their people finally. And that's really what I want. I want that, that cheers when Norm walks in, everybody says Norm. That's our goal now, is to make everybody feel at home and feel like they're with their people, with their peeps.
Cool. So that's kind of like what, when you go, when a gamer or a geek goes to a convention about their passion for the first time, even if they're not with Geek Nation Tours, just going on their own. One of the things that I think that's really interesting that I experienced when I first did it was realizing there's so many people that are passionate about the same thing I am in the same place. So it sounds like you figured out a way to kind of do that no matter where the group is going. So it's kind of like you have that moment where you're traveling with people who all are passionate about what you're doing, but now you're seeing cool things related to your passion together, right?
Yeah. And what I do is my goal is to create a vehicle for everybody to strike up conversations, right? Because when you're on the tour, you have this instant family, right? And when you go to Gen Con by yourself or maybe with a couple buddies, you tend to stick together with each other, and you can't kind of have a little bit of a group, but you don't always branch out. You don't force yourself, and I think you should. If you go to a convention, you should always force yourself to talk to people and to hang out with people and to game with people. Gen Con is a great example of that, where you're gaming and you come across somebody that you really like, and then you just hang out with them for a couple days or whatever. So, but I try to make it so it's easy for everybody to do that. So you have that straight into the gaming, straight into the convention, but you've always got a big group to fall back on. And I often have like groups of 4 come to my tours. I've had that at Adepticon. I also have it at Gen Con, and they have their inner group, but then they have this bigger group, this tour group that they travel with also. And it just makes it so much easier, and you just get this instant bond. That's the real goal.
That's very cool. So how have you evolved the Geek Nation Tours format to kind of facilitate that?
Well, Gen Con and Adepticon are good examples of that. Like I really try to make sure that we do something at night that is gaming related. So Gen Con, we always have guests come by. Like obviously you guys came by for the welcome dinner, and we did role playing D&D. So that was a kind of an event, and I try to have that every night. So even if you're geeking out somewhere else, you know that you can come back to the hotel or come back to the restaurant that we're at and have a game with somebody right away. Right. And I think that camaraderie, those elite gaming events that I try to put on each time. Sometimes I have a designer, sometimes I have a manufacturer, sometimes I have both. Sometimes we do a certain thing like True Dungeon, or we do Artemis. I don't know if Craig, you remember that one, where we just get people together and they all have this kind of a team building type of thing. So Adepticon is a good example. What I do is this year I'm creating we're going out for bowling, so we're going to do a bowling night. That's going to be a lot of fun. Awesome. Super pumped about that. I'm going to break everybody up a little bit. If they know a few people, I'll probably put them in opposite teams, make it kind of competitive. There'll be bocce, we'll be eating, and then we'll have like maybe Ronnie from Mantic might be there, or a pro hobbyist might be there, or somebody in the industry might be there, and you'll be gaming with them. And I think that that's really valuable too. Like sure, you get to hang out with or see these people maybe on a panel or something like that, but it just has so much. When you can say that I bowled with, Phil Kelly or whoever, some or one of you guys, the D6 generation guy. I bowled with Craig and he was awesome, but Russ sucked.
Yeah, and that's how that works.
And that's the kind of thing that you bring back and you have that memory more so than what miniatures you bought. It's more wow, I got the bowl with, and they're just regular guys just like me,
Yeah. Now, are the bowling pins painted up like space orcs? Because that'd be awesome. I think
I should try to.
You should take this to the next level, Teras.
I mean, if we're going to the next level, we might as well just go to the next level.
Right.
That's true. I should try to do that.
Or stormtroopers. I feel like stormtrooper decals on bowling pins would be pretty easy to do. But anyway, that's a whole new thing.
Yeah,
Star Wars themed bowling
could be like big Godzillas or
lasers look like little lightsaber beams. There's a thing here. There's geek bowling is a new thing I think we could do. That sounds really cool. I like that. So it's really neat. So it's getting to know people in a different format. I think that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's where we're really headed. I think that's really the big thing. And because what's great about it is that you have sometimes you're in a situation, even if you're at a party, right? You're at a party, you have no idea. What am I going to talk to this person beside me? I have no idea what she's interested or he's interested. This is going to kill me, right? And then you have to kind of pull that out. If you're socially savvy, you can pull it out and maybe come to you're interested in this one thing that we both have a common frame of reference on. Good, let's talk about that. And sometimes that can be bad because it gives you politics or religion or something like that, which is never a good thing. But with geeks, what's great about it is that you're interested in something cool, right? So just love what you love and talk about what you love, and hang out and drink beer and throw balls and that kind of thing. So that's really what it's developed into.
Oh, cool. Now, what's the reaction been to the changes? Are you finding folks are even more engaged and more excited about the tours?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've got way more people that are interested in the tours. I got way more people that are kind of outside interested in the tours. Two really great things happened to me in the last little bit. The first one actually happened last year at our Star Trek. The last time we had our Star Trek tour, Rod Roddenberry was there, and he engaged with some of my tour members. I had already gone to bed, and apparently they regaled him on what we did. And later he came up to me and said, "I want to work with you." So we're actually working on a tour. Oh, wow. It's one of our new sections on the company is called the Geek Elite, and this particular one is under that heading. It's called the Touching the Stars, and it's all going to be about space exploration and utopian futures. So what we're going to do is we're going to go across the country, across the United States, start at JPL and go to Houston and then end up in Florida at the Cape. And we're going to have astronauts all the way through it, and we're going to talk about cool stuff. Yeah, it's just...
How long is that trip?
It'll be 2 weeks. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a lot of... That
sounds awesome.
So, I mean, we'll be flying all across.
Yeah,
You're right, of course.
Those in-country travel days eat it up, though. You need 2 weeks to
exactly.
cover
You need
that much ground,
Exactly. One day is going to be just a travel day. That's all. You don't do anything on either side of that anyway, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Oh, that's great.
So yeah, we're really excited about that one. That was really, really cool. And I mean, I went to university, and as my first attempt was honors physics. I wanted to be an astronaut, or I wanted to work for NASA, and I soon discovered that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. But
You're plenty smart enough for us, Teras.
That's right.
I'm glad to hear that. Thanks, guys. But everything comes full circle, and now I get to be engaged in something that I wanted to be when I was in my 20s. So this is it was a big deal for me, and another huge one. I think almost a bigger deal for me is the people from the Very Large Array in New Mexico came up to me. You know what that is, right?
SETI.
So Very Large Array, they came up to me at the Star Trek convention this year and said, we want to work with you. And so that led me to get into touch with the people at the Green Bank radio telescope. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in touch with them, and we're going to do a SETI Carl Sagan tour. So we'll actually climb the same number 5 where Carl Sagan filmed, and hang out with where he was, and where Frank Drake created his theories, and apparently at the Green Bank radio telescope, the lounge is exactly the same furniture and everything. So we'll be able to hang out there, and we'll get lectures about the search for extraterrestrials and just really cool stuff like that. So
that's good timing, Teras, because they think they found something. Did you see the news?
Yeah, I know they did.
Yeah, it's good timing.
They got another wow.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, they got another wow.
Never know.
And actually, SETI, the Allen telescope in San Francisco, is now actually sometime, I think, each day to watching that particular area of space.
Star, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's cool. Both frightening and exciting at the same time. So
we're not worried here in New Hampshire, Teras, and you should be comfortable in Canada, because we all know that when the aliens come, maple syrup will solve the problem. Mm-hmm. So we've got plenty here, and I know you've got some up there in Canada.
It is known.
Now, we do know that also, though, the New Hampshire maple syrup really was the maple syrup that saved the day. So if you need to come anywhere, if the Canadian maple syrup doesn't really solve the problem, you can come down here with us, Teras. We'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll save you some.
No problem.
We'll see. Maybe they travel all that way for and back bacon and just breakfast, Canadian and breakfasts and that
maybe,
kind of thing.
But we know that for sure they'll go to Dunkin' Donuts before Tim Hortons. That's also known.
But they always, the bad ones always seem to land in Washington, so we don't have to really. Yeah, we're kind of far away from that, so that's kind of. Hopefully, we get everything sorted by the time they make their way up north.
Yes, exactly. Excellent. Well, that's really cool. So, what are some of the big tours you got coming? So you mentioned the SETI tour, and of course, the space astronaut tour sounds awesome too. Any other big changes for next year? We have, again, we're going in a whole bunch of different directions. I think that's our biggest change. We're going to be doing a Memphis blues and kind of a musical tour, like a musician tour, I guess would be more like it, visiting Sun's studios and Stax Museum and just hanging out in. We know one of my Trek participants. He's actually one of the muckety mucks at Graceland, so we get to go and take a look at Graceland. We're hoping to. I'm hoping
you
to
networking.
Yeah, it's incredible. If I would have went back in time and say, this is how many people I know. I know this guy from Graceland, and I know the guys from the D6 generation, and all the other cool people that I've met all over this 5 years. I would laugh in my face, and it was spittle coming out of my mouth, I'm sure.
Well, that wouldn't be very Canadian of you.
No, it would be pretty rude of me.
It'd be very rude. Which everyone knows is the antithesis of Canadian.
Unless you're on an escalator. I want to point out the whole escalator thing. Don't underestimate Canadians on escalators.
Why is that?
Sorry. I've had this.
It's just the amount of people I know, and that tour itself. I even hope to have like we a jam session in Sun Studios, and just it's going to be.
Wow.
So we're going in like tons of different directions with the place. So
Cool.
and each our gaming ones are cool too. We try to theme them now.
Mm-hmm.
So Gen Con is last year. This last one was dungeon crawlers, and now we're gonna have an overarching zombie theme to zombie games all the way through. But we're also gonna theme each day. So and Essen's coming in October 2017, and our UK miniatures ones. That's a big
That's
kind of big.
almost
new.
one of the first ones you did, wasn't it? That's the one I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually we're actually revisiting. So, but we're going to slow it down. Like I think that's really what I kind of have learned is that people. It's good to see a whole bunch of stuff, but you also got to give people a break, and you got to give people a break to game on a gaming tour,
Right.
And that's one thing that I have a hard time is to say, okay, how can I give these people an experience, but also get them rolling dice? And so in our UK tour, we're going to actually go to Mantic for one day. We're going to go to Warlord for one day. We're going to go to Foundry Games, War Games Foundry for one day. We're going to go to GW for a couple days. We're going to I'll try to get a couple guests. Carl Tuttle from the Independent Characters has already said that he's going to show up, and so we're going to try to have some cool guests traveling us all the way through, and I think we're going to try to start in Liverpool this year. Next year, and maybe do some music stuff there too. So yeah, just more gaming, slower pace, and just hanging out with cool industry people. That's really the kind of our new direction.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Well, very exciting, Teras, and of course we'll keep people abreast of this stuff. In the middle of the show, just listen for the Geek Nation Tour ads, and we'll be sure to let them know what's going on. Now,
But
exactly, go Craig.
we're not. Teras is not done with just traveling now.
I know.
No, as
That
I
would have been
said,
enough by
he's
itself.
got, we'll say fingers, because apparently tentacles is bothersome to Russ. He's got his fingers in multiple pies. You see this line that I'm screaming?
Yeah, that was very good.
And so, Teras, tell us a little bit about the Freebooters Network.
Well, I created it just recently. I purchased or acquired 40K Radio, and created a network called the Freebooters Network, and we're really excited about that. And basically, it's a place where podcasters could come together and share their listeners with other podcasters and build their listener base up. So it's more of a one-stop place where podcasters can put their stuff, and fans get access to kind of exclusive material and more material from their podcasters that they already listen to. So they just get more of what they listen to already, and the podcasters get a bigger audience, instant successes, and just a way to grow the community, the listener community, and the podcasting community together. So that's really the big impetus between the whole thing, is just to gather everybody together and say, okay, let's try to get bigger and reach more people and have people enjoy what we do even more.
Now, what makes the shows in the Freebooters Network sort of unique? Like, what's sort of the common thread to those shows?
Well, they're all geek related. Like, they're all very much geeky things. We can talk about the lineup later, but really, it's about. We try to cover all things geek. That's the big thing. But our goal is to be like super positive. We don't want. We're kind of done with. I think the podcast industry is, and you guys never, I think, got caught up this. One of you guys always have a stellar reputation.
No hate, Teras. No
hate. Sometimes we have accidentally dipped into the hate pond with a toe or something.
No, I know, but
culturally, we try to be positive.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's really my direction for the whole network, is that positivity is really the big thing. And like I said, I mean, that's why I think people listen to you. And I think that's why people continue to listen to you, because you can only hear bitching so long. And after a while, you just get, why am I listening to this? It's about something I love. Why am I bitching about 40K
But gamers are so good at that, Teras.
Yeah.
We are so good at complaining about the things that we ostensibly love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I'm trying to make it so this is kind of a cultural experiment for me. I'm really trying to make it so we get away from that. I mean, we have our forum, our Freebooters forum, and it's part of the whole network. And on that network, it's been a really good network because it's a paid forum, so everybody kind of wants to not bitch and complain as much. But flaming and trolls, that's all, even before I acquired it, it was always really, really well serviced. Like those people were really put down and in their place right away on that thing. But I'm also developed a new rule of, like, just don't bitch. Like, you can complain a little bit. You can discuss about rules. You can be positive about. You can have discussions, but you can't complain over and over again. So as soon as any thread gets over a certain time, a certain amount of posts, the mods hop in there and say, okay, listen, this has gone from a discussion to just a bitch session, and we don't have bitch sessions anymore. Yeah. So that's really that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that we're in a positive environment, and everybody can be in that environment and not have to be worried if they're going to get flamed or bitched out.
Cool. That's awesome. So, and this was inspired. Do you feel like, what got you sort of interested in doing this whole thing and branching out beyond just touring?
Yeah, this seems like this is a whole new thing for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a little bit that wants me to get the word out about Geek Nation Tours, but I'm not going to be on there. I might even actually be on podcasts less now, because I don't want to be seen as the part of that. But I think it's always been that I want to bring people together. I mean, that's what we talked about how Geek Nation Tours has kind of evolved into a place where it's more about the community and more about building little mini communities. And I want to be involved in that. I've always wanted to bring people together, and that's what we're trying to do. Like with the forum, that's the goal. With all the podcasters, that's the goal. With the listeners, that's the goal. And just to have people gather and in a safe spot and love diversity and love the fact that they're surrounded with cool stuff and that we live in such a great time for the geek and yeah, that's why I just wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of a positive direction, and I think that's if I can do it through Geek Nation Tours and with the Freebooters Network, then I'm happy.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nice.
So how is the whole thing structured? So you've got a school of shows, a network of shows, a plethora, if you will.
Ooh, plethora.
And are they on a single channel, like a single? How's it all going to work?
Yep. Yeah, they're all on the same feed. Mm-hmm. They all come out periodically. We have an agreement with whatever podcaster that he or she is going to put out a podcast over a certain amount of time. Over a year, they have to provide this many podcasts. They come on periodically. They build their podcast, then it goes to us, and we put it on the feed. So there's only one feed. So if you subscribe, you get everybody. You get everybody that's on our lineup. You get a little bit of this, a little bit of gaming, a little bit of other geeky goodness. So that's our goal, and we try to make sure that everybody's listening to stuff. I mean, if you subscribe and you don't listen, you don't have to listen to a particular episode, of course. But we really try to make sure that when you subscribe, it's on one feed and it's right there, one-stop shopping, if you will.
Very cool. So what are some of the shows? Give us some examples of the shows that are on the...
How's it all going together?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we're still working with the Daniele from History on Fire. He's amazing. If you're into history and you want to have a podcast about it, he's a great one to have. Excellent podcaster. We're going to do a show called the Scholarly Warrior, and we're still working on the details with Osprey and some other publishing companies. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at, as you know, Osprey has some cool books, and so what we're going to do is we're going to interview those people with the goal of trying to understand a specific thing that they've written about, and that thing can be a specific battle, like the Battle of Sekigahara or Little Bighorn or Waterloo or whatever, and it'll also be about a specific person, but also we'll have books on the equipment of the SS or something like that. Mm-hmm. We want to make it so it's kind of like Osprey's books. They're kind of randomized. You can get a book on almost anything, and we want to talk to those authors about those really specific things. So we're still working on that with that, and we've got a couple other publishers, also Osprey and a couple others, and we're trying to create that so it's more of a historical type of thing, so that geeky niche gets a little bit of itched, so to speak. Mm-hmm. We have the independent characters. They've got a new show called The Unbound, where they talk about everything other than 40K and 30K. So if they're playing, if they're playing Cthulhu or RPGing or just doing a board game, they talk about that. Anonymous Tabletop. Those guys are a lot of the people from the old Screaming Heretics show. So they've kind of banded together and made a new podcast. So really entertainment based. A lot of comments in between the podcasters, the hosts. So that's kind of nice. It Will Not Die. That's a podcast about. It's more of a fantasy based podcast. So Age of Sigmar, Frostgrave, anything fantasy based, but they also talk a little bit about science fiction stuff, but also about just being a geek. So that's actually one of my favorite podcasts right now, that one. The Nerd Herders, always a favorite, and you guys have great relationship with them. They're a bunch of awesome people and just really great, diverse, talking about all things geek and role-playing to movies. Last time they had just a little while ago, they had one on music that I really, their favorite music of all time, and that was a really good one. So just really, really diverse. We've created a new podcast called the Tire Kicker Podcast, and that's Dave from the Nerd Herders. He's actually also on this show, and it's basically about Kickstarters. So when there's a Kickstarter out, we try to release the podcast, the episode, right at the same time as when the the Kickstarter goes live, and we talk about it, and we have an interview with the designer or the project manager or the company, and so that's a really cool one that we really have developed. We've had Mantic and Secret Weapon and Cryptozoic on it, and several other ones. So cool. I think it's a kind of cool concept, that one. We've got Mantic Radio, so that's really cool. They talk about all things Mantic. Pat, great guy and always interesting to listen to. And then, of course, the 40K Radio, which is brand new, 3 new hosts. What can I say about it? A positive, super positive show. Talks about all things 40K, and I wanted to get it when I took it over. I wanted it to kind of go back to its roots, talk about just 40K and just 30K, just basically anything in the GW sci-fi realms. Of course, they might go a little bit into other stuff GW does, but really trying to keep it narrow and the focus really, really tight on what they're talking about. And I think that 40K Radio has gotten away from 40K, and I wanted to put it back in. I wanted to put the 40K back in 40K Radio.
Nice.
So, yeah. And then, of course, you guys with the last chapter.
We want to help out. So what we're going to do is, this is exciting. And, of course, we want to be there for Teras and help out with this whole project. I think it's fantastic. So we want to do it. And one of the things, Teras, you mentioned to us when you talked about this, so I thought was really cool, is you kind of wanted unique content in the network, content that isn't just our main show, rebroadcast. So what we thought we'd do is, unfortunately, Craig and I don't have time to create net new content just for freebooters, but
4 hours every 2 weeks is about our max.
Right. But what we're going to do is we're going to take old episodes of the Lost Chapters. So the Lost Chapters, we now have I think 3 years of Lost Chapter episodes. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the beginning of those and start putting them into the Freebooters Network, about one a month or so. And that's going to be great because then if you've never listened to the Lost Chapters, which is most of you, because only a very small percentage of our listeners actually are patrons and subscribe, then this is new content. But don't worry, patrons, you're still getting 2 new Lost Chapters a month that are years ahead.
3 years early.
Right, 3 years early. So you guys are living in the future, but our friends on the Freebooters Network get to kind of go back in time, a little time travel, if you. It's kind of like we're Doctor Who here. Of
kind of the best of in a way.
It's kind of like best of Lost Chapters. We'll pick some of those out there, throw them in there, and hopefully you guys will enjoy them. And I just think it's exciting, Teras. I think it's great to have a very positive network, really dedicated and centered around our hobby, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited.
Thank you. I know I'm excited about that. You guys are coming on. You guys, like I said before, have always had the same direction that I've always thought was the positive, the right way to go. And you guys are always super professional and super fun and super respected. So it's a deep honor and it makes me very happy to see that you guys are going to hop on board.
We're flattered to be asked. So this is exciting. So what else? Those are the ones that are in the network now. You got any other thing coming soon?
Yeah, we've got we keep on getting requests from podcasters, and if you're a podcaster and you want to hop on board, send me an email. What we've done is we've kind of transitioned just these first amount of shows, trying to get them going. But in the fall, I think we're going to open it up again. I think that there's a Star Wars one that we're really interested in having. There's a comic book review one, and just talk about comic books. Several other ones that are really itching to get in. I think there's a Dreadball one. I think I've got a total of 6 more actually that are interested in getting on the network. So it's going to grow. So so you'll have everything right there. You'll be able to listen to tons, and then when you listen to whoever, like you guys and the independent characters are a good example of that. If you have some of these podcasts have shows just on the network. So 40K Radio will always be just on the network. Mm-hmm. But you guys and independent characters is a good example of that. They'll be referenced back to your main show. So all the people that maybe haven't heard of you guys before or whatever will be still listening back to you guys. So I think that's another goal of that whole thing.
It's exciting. Very cool.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Teras, thank you so much for this update on Geek Nation Tours and, of course, the bright new venture, the expanding Freebooters Network. Now, Teras, if people want to find out more about Geek Nation Tours, of course, we know to go to geeknationtours.com. But where do they go to find out more about the Freebooters Network?
Yeah, you can go to freebootersnetwork.com. That's spelled exactly as it should be. No strange spelling on that one. You can go to the Freebooters forum. That's Freebooters TAZ. And also, if you wanted to find us on iTunes, for instance, type in the full thing, Freebooters Network, and it'll bring you right to the feed, and you can hop on that way. We're on several different feeds, though. So as long as you're looking for Freebooters Network, it'll be right there, front and center.
Very cool. Well, Teras, thank you very much for the update. That's fantastic. So we're going to take a quick break here. Hear from Total Fangirl. We'll be back with a big fat game review and Teras in a little bit.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out, as always, is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation, and you too can support the show. So, I find myself in an odd situation. I travel a lot, which I think you guys know. In fact, I know some of the flight attendants on my common flights by first name. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time in airplanes, and normally I'm working on a plane because I treat it like an office. So I have all my stuff ready, and I'm writing an article, and I'm getting work done so that I can keep up with life. But I normally have these spots, like when you're taking off, you can't really do a lot of work because you don't have Wi-Fi until 10,000 feet. And when you're landing, you can't do a lot of work because you don't have Wi-Fi below 10,000 feet again. So you have these times when you can't actually get any work done. And sometimes I have a book that I read, and sometimes I have games that I play on my phone. Oddly, in the last 4 or 5 days, I have both run out of books by all of my favorite authors. Like I'd started some series that had 5 or 6 books already written. They're done. And I don't have a game on my phone, like a goofy, stupid, kill time, nothing complicated game to play. So I was thinking that this audience should have some pretty good suggestions. So first off, like a game for your, like to play on your iPhone. I don't want something that requires great amounts of strategy because often this is just me killing time as I'm waiting to board a flight or sit in the car or whatever. So I need a fun game to play on the iPhone, like something you guys really like. Anybody recommend something terrible that's old and horrible like Angry Birds, and I'll never speak to you again. But any games you guys like to play on your phones, I'm really kind of curious for an iPhone. So it has to be an iOS app. And if you have any book series that you like. Now, I like stuff with, vampires and werewolves and like that supernatural kind of element and sorcerers, but no fantasy that has names that are so complicated that I can't pronounce them. Like if your name is nothing but, I guess, consonants with an apostrophe somewhere in the middle, I can't read that book because I can't pronounce that name in my head and it messes me up. So please email me, send me an email at nwakeland@gmail.com and let me know what book series you think I might like to get into, and also if you have any apps for the iPhone that are fun games to play. So I am on the road roughly 20 days this month. So you guys, you got to come up with some suggestions for me so I'm not bored out of my mind while I'm traveling.
Hey, that sound means it's time to talk about our friends at the War Store, led by the mightiest Viking of them all, Vic.
That's Viking. Right, Vic the Viking.
Craig, have you checked out their brand new, super expanded pre-order section?
I have, Russ. It's fantastic. Very exciting.
It is indeed.
And it gets you excited for stuff that isn't even out yet.
Right. And able to order stuff that isn't even out yet. So you can go ahead. If you're all excited about new stuff coming out, you're like, oh, what's the new hotness coming from Privateer Press on War Machine? Oh, look, here it is. I mean, we've got to grab some of that stuff. Right there, boom, there it is. Oh, there's the new Undercity expansion. Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
The new Striker Pros. Oh, man. So all kinds of cool hotness there going on. But my favorite thing about the War Store, Craig, is how easy it is to find things on their website through their cool navigation structure there. And, of course, the best part is not only do they have some of the best prices on the internet you're going to find, but also they're that fantastic service. You run into a problem, you have a question, boom, no problem. Neil and his friends over at the War Store get back to you quick and great.
They do. They have an amazing depth of product. And as you were saying with the navigation, it's all cross-referenced. So if something might be fantasy and it might be historical, it's going to be in both. So you don't have to worry about searching everywhere to find it. Anywhere it could possibly be, it's going to be there. And then, of course, you got the tabs across the top that are going to break it down for terrain, bases, bits, paint, tools, glue, dice, and game aids. And again, if it fits into more than one category, it's going to be in that category. It is awesome just to browse this website and find all the cool stuff that you could possibly buy.
Exactly. You need it. They got it over at thewarstore.com.
This is the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. So it's been a while since we've been super excited about a miniatures game.
Yeah, like
and
a whole 2 months.
What's that?
A whole 2 months.
What was the last one we were super excited about?
I don't know. There's been quite a few, actually. And think about it in recent. Anyway, continue. Don't let me
I'm
derail
trying to
us.
think of like the last time I painted an army, though. That's been a while.
All right. You're not counting Antares. You're not counting Guild Ball.
Well, Antares was like a year ago. Guild Ball is not
Arena
an
Rex.
army; it's a team.
Yeah, not counting Arena Rex.
Arena Rex is a Ludi,
All right,
a Ludus, a Ludus. Anyway,
So
big
how
old
many
army.
miniatures make an army?
I would say, our first game. I haven't even mentioned what we're. The two of you working in concert have ruined my intro. We're going
You
to
do that
talk
on your
about
own.
Conflict 47 now.
Yes, we are. Conflict 47, the
Yes.
miniature army game. Craig, how would you define the size of an army for a miniature army game?
Okay, well, we played our first game was an 800-point game, which is a decent intro game, and I had 22, or actually 23 infantry models, 5 heavy infantry, a walker, and a tank.
Right.
And
So
Russ had something similar.
Yeah, so about, 30, 25,
Yeah,
30
so
models?
about between 25 and 30.
Yeah.
You could get a lot more if you just wanted bog standard guys flooding the field.
Yeah, but we all have machine guns, let's be honest.
But we wanted the big guns to play the game, but we just played a 1,000-point game, and I didn't play with that many more models because I didn't have that many more models. So, but again, you could have played with bigger. It depends on how many tanks and how many
So
transports.
you're saying 30 models plus is an army scale game?
I would say 30 models plus is an army scale game, especially if they're. I mean, it's a company level or a platoon level game, right? That's that at the very least. So it's and that's the way the game is packaged, and the way it's sold to you is it's reinforced platoon on reinforced platoon, or several reinforced platoons, which I guess would then make it a company if you had 2 or 3.
So
That 25 infantry, are they divided into squadrons or anything like that?
They're divided into squads. They are. They're divided into squads and teams. A team is usually 2 to 5 guys, depending on whether they're crewing like a bazooka or a heavy howitzer. So or a command team could be anywhere between 1 and 3 models.
let's
same
set the
thing
stage for listeners right now, because all we hear is talking right now
let's
is
set
like
the stage.
squad size.
First, when did this game come out?
Conflict 47 is a brand new miniature war game from our friends at Warlord Games. These are the guys who have brought you games like Bolt Action and Gates of Antares, right?
Yes, indeed.
It's designed by, the current rules writer is Chris Hale, and it's based heavily on the Bolt Action rule set. So this is really the Bolt Action rules. In fact, I think arguably at this point it's compatible with Bolt Action. But the theme of the game is Wierd War II. So where Bolt Action is a World War II, army scale, platoon scale engagement game, Conflict 47 is an alternate history slightly after World War II, i.e. 1947. But the exploding, let's, before I tell you all about that, why don't we have Teras? Teras, would you please do a dramatic reading of sort of the high-level paragraph about what is Conflict 47?
Damn you, making me read in public.
Yes.
As World War II continues beyond 1945, the battling countries have become even more desperate to develop new super weapons to give them a winning advantage. Exploiting new technologies revealed from the first nuclear explosions, the Axis and Allied forces quickly developed new tanks and strange armored walkers to become the vanguard of their armies. Supported by new highly equipped or terrible twisted troops. With the Soviet Union seceding from the Allies, the war now becomes a 3-way conflict.
Dun, dun, dun. Exactly.
Oh, I was going to say that.
You did very well to the last sentence there, but terribly twisted troops.
I did terribly.
That's a tongue twister. Terribly twisted troops. Say that.
I know. I read that too.
So
They did it on purpose.
So
They
the
did
high
it on
level,
purpose.
it's a little after World War II. Your basic troops are all the same sorts of guys that you would see in Bolt Action, right? So they're literally the same plastic. So your infantry, your regular dudes, machine guns, basic vehicles like your half tracks and your jeeps and all that stuff, that's all still there. But then this new technology that's been happening thanks to the atomic explosions doing some strange things that Craig will tell us more about in a second. Now you've got new technology like two-legged and spider walkers. You've got Tesla-type weaponry in the tanks. You've got the Germans and Russians are experimenting with biological modifications and DNA. So now you've got werewolves and vampires and zombies and werebears and all kinds of craziness running around the battlefield. So all of a sudden, add a few units and your World War II Army game just turned into a Weird War II Army game, just like that. It's basically what we're talking about here.
Like, psst, that was a lightning gun.
Yes. And as we mentioned in the Lost Chapter, for some people, Weird War appeals more than actual historical war. And Craig and Teras and I are all one of those people. So
we're all one of those people.
And part of the fun of these sorts of things is diving into the world that they've created to have this game make sense.
Yes.
And so, Craig, you usually absorb the fluff at rates I can barely comprehend. Well, meanwhile, I've jumped ahead to the rules and figured the game out. So, why don't you give us like the high-level 5 to 10 minute sort of spiel about what happened after those atomic bombs exploded and where the different factions are right now with technology and everything.
All right. Well, very quickly, history is the same right up until 1944, I think, when the Americans exploded a bomb in Arizona during a test. And instead of just exploding like the bombs did in our timeline, the exploding bomb created a rift in time and space that hung there in the air and sort of stabilized after the bomb dissipated. They don't really deal a lot with the radiation that is involved with all these explosions. But so anyway, so there's this rift, and they were like, wow, that's scary. Okay, anyway, we've still got one more bomb. Why don't we go ahead and drop that on Dresden? So they decide, the Americans decide, instead of bombing Japan, they decide to bomb Dresden in Germany. And they bomb Dresden, and that bomb also opens a rift over Dresden, which somehow isn't entirely completely destroyed. So now there's a weird rift over German territory and a weird rift over American territory, and the war starts to drag out a little bit. And while the war is dragging out, scientists are listening. They're like studying these rifts, and they start to realize that transmissions are coming through the rift. And they're garbled and they're confusing and they're not in any format that anyone in America or Germany can really figure out. But they start puzzling over it, and they start realizing that the communications, the signals that they're getting are actually forming these partial schematics to things that they've never even dreamed of before. And so America, getting these transmissions, starts to explore the possibilities with all of these strange things that they're being transmitted. Unbeknownst to them, the Germans are doing the same thing. And eventually, through espionage and comparing captured recordings and things like that, they realize that the two transmissions are coming from two different places, speaking in two different languages, and nobody knows who or what the transmissions are coming from. But someone is fueling the American war effort with advanced futuristic war technology, and someone is doing the same thing for the Germans. So what happens now is the Allies, which remember, among others, U.S., England, and Russia, and Canada.
And the noble Canadian.
The noble Canadians, which I believe count as Commonwealth troops in World War II.
Yes.
They start to have a lot of tension because the Americans start developing all this technology, such as the Tesla lightning cannon. Mm-hmm. And they're hoarding it, sort of. They're very, very hesitant to give away the technology that they've created. And so there's a lot of tension between the British and the Americans. And they're still allies. This part, see, if I had been writing the fluff, I would have gone a little farther with this to justify more overtly combat between the British and the Americans. It doesn't really do that. It's more of a historical overview rather than a justification for everybody being able to fight anybody. But still, there's tension there because there's tension there because we haven't given the British everything that we've got. The Russians, we weren't giving anything, so Stalin was like, forget you, and he completely severed his alliance, then sent spies into the Allied areas and the German areas so that they could get technology. So the Russian technology is almost entirely stolen from both Allies and the Germans. So if you look at their tanks, their walkers look very much like they were stolen from the Germans. Their biotechnology is very much stolen from the Germans, or developed, like extrapolated upon the technology that the Germans had. And the British have
Russian bear, right?
Oh, it's a bear.
They have werebear troops.
So the Germans made werewolves, and the Russians were like, well, bears are better, so they made werebears.
That's awesome. I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, exactly. So so you've got the Russians, and you've got the Germans, and you've got the British, and you've got the Americans, and each of them have very distinct technology that, like, the British are using Lend-Lease walkers. So the walker technology is roughly the same, although the British don't have nearly as much access as the Americans do. Everybody has powered armor, although it's not all created equal.
No.
I believe the Germans first developed it, but the Americans copied the idea and then perfected it.
Yeah.
So the Americans are faster. The Germans have better weapons that they can equip their guys with, theoretically. Their heavy weapon guys with. And each of the Allies have access to the Tesla weaponry on their tanks, and the Germans have access to gravity pulse technology on their tank, on their futuristic tanks, and the Russians are using earthquake generating technology on their tanks.
Yep.
Or sound waves.
Yeah, right.
Or is yours sound waves?
No,
I can't
mine's
remember.
a gravity beam, and theirs is sonic. Yeah.
There you go. There's this, like, a massive sound barrage.
Yep.
And so you've got all this stuff, all this really cool technology that's being developed, and everybody's got their unique stuff also. So the Germans are really into bioengineering their werewolves. They have vampires. They have zombies, and it's really cool in the fluff the way they sort of stumbled upon this sort of stuff. And they wouldn't the first time they used zombies, it freaked out their own guys as much as it freaked out the Allies. So they kind of pull back on the zombies a little bit and only use them in specific instances where it'll be helping them less than it hurts them.
Well, the best part about the zombies is the game mechanic does that too.
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
-1
it hurts
modifier
everybody
hurts
around
everybody near them. Yeah, no one likes to be near zombies.
Yeah,
That's
Right.
awesome.
and
So there's a fear element there too.
Yeah, oh yeah,
exactly.
That's built into the game.
Yep. And then they perfected that technology. They rolled it into werewolves. They perfected that technology. They rolled it. I love they combined human DNA, crocodile DNA, and bat DNA to create the vampires.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
And so they're awesome looking. You can imagine.
yeah, they have giant winged membranes, and they have flight special rules and all that.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah,
They're cool.
it's and these aren't like there's no supernatural element really. They're not humans that turn into these things.
No,
they're humans that were scientifically turned into
Right.
these things.
It's like
so the werewolves don't like go back to human form or anything.
No.
They're basically mutated humans.
Someone thought, well, the myth of a werewolf seems like it'd be awesome. Let's make a real one, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly.
It's all science. Science.
It's science.
Right.
Blinded me with science.
The British guys have these awesome robots called
Yeah,
the
they're cool.
automatons or the automatons. And they look really cool. They look very steampunky robots with the British helmets, their infantry helmets on, and little steam stuff on their chest and stuff. And some of their tanks actually use automaton drivers, so you can't get a crew stunned result on those because they don't care. And there's a really cool little flow chart where the automatons, they ignore some things and they don't ignore other things. So they're like a really cool, and I think they all carry light machine guns. So they're really versatile. And then coming up, of course, you've got the whole array of things that were going on in the world in 1945. We're in 1947 now, obviously. And the history actually extends around the world, so it tells you what's going on in each major theater of the war, including in the Pacific, where things are not going well for us because we didn't use the atomic bomb. And what happens is eventually Germany realizes if it doesn't give this technology to Japan, then the Japanese are eventually going to fold, and America is going to swing through, and then they're just going to get crushed between America, but between the fronts. So they eventually start sending their Rift. It's called Rift Tech or Rift technology. They start sending their stuff to the Japanese. So the next advancement in the game itself, which is supposed to come out next year, is the introduction of the Japanese forces.
Yeah, so
in the Conflict 47 world.
Right. So in the basic rulebook, there are 4 factions.
Yes.
Fully realized with all their units and everything, and they are the United States, Germany, the Russians, and the British. Right. So
yes.
And the only allies in there technically are the U.S. and the Brits. So Russians are out on their own, the Germans are on their own. So you have 3-way battles, but you can certainly have the British fight whoever you want, arguably. So really got 4 pretty unique factions there with all some of their own unique stuff. And what's great is, right out of the gate, because the plastics for the basic troops are the same as the plastics as bolt action, and a lot of the vehicles are too, you've already got all of bolt action out there to start collecting your army with. You just got to add those few new units to make it weird, right?
Right.
Now, unfortunately, at this moment, there's only the only available stuff you could buy. That's the weird stuff is for the United States and for Germany. But the Russians are coming pretty soon, right? Like
the Russians and I was just looking at that today. I believe they come in. They're some of their units come in November, and their starter boxes come in December.
Right. So they're getting soon. They're soon. And so let's talk about. Oh, go ahead, Teras.
I was just going to say, if you want to get the jump on that, all you have to do, or for those people that are playing bolt action, all you have to do is get the units that are available for them prior to them even releasing.
You start
weird
painting
stuff.
your basic infantry, right, and getting that all ready, so that when your weird stuff comes out, you're ready to rock, right?
Right.
Because the Japanese are coming, so you could do literally you could do the Japanese.
Right.
Yeah, and the only thing against the Japanese is that you don't have the Conflict 47 army lists for them, and very recently, I think in the last week, Warlord came out with a whole bunch of technical and digital support for the game, and one of the things they came out with was an article like, "Can I use my bolt action army books for Conflict 47?" And they said, absolutely, you can if you're willing to. It has to be the old fashioned GW opponent approved sort of thing. But it does warn you that some of the rules in bolt action aren't going to mesh very cleanly with the rules of Conflict 47.
But the mechanics are so close that they're almost interchangeable. There's a few little things here and there.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about buying into the game, right? So right now there is a starter box for the United States and a starter box for Germany. So if you're not haven't played bolt action before and you just want to jump right in, you buy one of those starter boxes. I think these starter boxes, Craig, are a fantastic deal.
Oh, right? They are, absolutely.
It's $100 for one of these things.
Yeah, I think it's like $110.
I want to say, I think I want to pay $100, $110 US. You get for both Germany and the United States. It's a separate box for each, so you're just buying your faction. It's not one of those things you got to buy a 2-player box and trade with somebody. You just got to buy this box as if you want to be a German player, an American player. You get a large tank. You get a walker. So if it's the Americans, you get an American tank and an American walker. You get the Tesla tank and a walker. If it's the German player, you get the cool gravity gun tank and you get a light walker, also a spider walker. Then you get a bunch of plastic dudes that are basically the bolt action plastics, so normal infantry as the core of your army. And then you also get enough guys in there to build some headquarter units. And if you're the Germans, in there also is some zombies, metal zombies. And if you're the Americans, you get some of your heavy armor dudes, right?
Yep. The Americans have 5 heavy armor, 20 regular infantry models, and the vehicles. You got 8 zombies, 24 plastic infantry, and the 2 vehicles.
But it's more than just that. Then you get a small version of the rule book. What's cool about this, though, this is the full rule book shrunk down.
Yeah, so this is not like just the rules.
This is the
full rule book.
It's page for page. The page numbers are identical. The content of each page is identical. Pictures and everything. It's just a smaller version. It's little tiny text, so you got to have good eyesight. But otherwise, it's great. You also get a bunch of pin markers, just like in you see in Bolt Action or in Gates of Antares. You also get order dice. You also get regular dice. So it's a full-on everything you need to play the game, right? In addition to all those great models. So that for that price point, you are really in with, as Craig and I discovered, between 800 and 900 point lists right out of the box. Really,
so
it's a good size.
Well, and the way you build your lists, it could be
almost
way over 1,000.
Yeah, right.
Because of the way bolt action works, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Now you Russ said that you're doing your vampire. So the vampire clearly comes from something. Is it? Is the vampire from this series, or is it from some?
So what happened is that was what's in the starter box. Now they've already had a wave of secondary releases this month, primarily for the Germans, which included blisters for the werewolves and the vampires. There's also you can buy the walkers separately now for both the Americans and the Germans. So you can get if you're already a bolt action player and just want to pick up a walker and add it to your list, you can do that. And coming on next month or later this month, Craig will start getting more cool stuff for the Americans. So that's a little. So the Germans just got a little jump and got some newer stuff faster. But yes, so by the time you hear this or weeks after this goes live, there'll be a good selection of pretty much most of the stuff or much of the stuff for the Germans and the Americans. And by the end of the year, I think the Russians and the British will be well equipped also, right?
Mm-hmm.
According to the current plans. And then next year, unfortunately, there's no rules right now for the Japanese, so you have to wait till next year. We don't even really know. There's no pictures in the book. There's no teasers in the book for the Japanese yet. There's some on their website a little bit, but wait till next year was when they'll kick in the Japanese, and that's that nice fifth faction. But I'm excited to have 4 factions out of the box. That follows my rule. So already, and what's great is because one of the challenges that Craig and I have found with the Antares is only 2 factions have plastics. So our friends want to get in these other factions for Antares, but there's no plastics, so it's very expensive. But because this is based on bolt action models, there's plastics for everything now, and as you pointed out, Teras, earlier, even the unreleased quote-unquote Japanese have all their plastics out. So all you're really waiting for here is the few special units that turn your army from a conventional World War II army to a Wierd War army. And the best part is, though, if you know a bolt-action player who, let's say, for example, has bolt-action Russians all painted up ready to go, you can play him using the K-47 rules for the Russians. He just doesn't have any of the weird units, and they'll play perfectly fine. Right, so he can jump right in and start playing you, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, that's a huge bonus, right? Because you just have something that just means that it's if you have any of your friends that are already into the game, bang, you're playing.
It's almost War Machine and Hordes like, right? It's almost where you can play pure bolt action, or you can play pure K-47, or you can play the 2 games against each other, almost. But there's a few little things. What you can do, though, is you can take all your models. Pretty much every unit or most units in bolt action their rules are in, if it's one of the main 4 factions, are in K-47. So you pretty much can play everything with K-47 rules, and you can almost play with the bolt action rules, but they have a lot more army books with special rules and stuff, and those things, that's where they give you sort of the tips on the Warlord site, because not everything translates over exactly. But it's really pretty cool. So it's an interesting move by them, because it's a smart move business-wise, right? Because now all their existing plastic sets now play for 2 games, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if you're a person like us, I'm now buying their plastic sets, which I wouldn't normally, because I'm normally not a big historical guy. But now that you've added some weird walkers, I'm all in, right? So
yeah,
good stuff.
And I mean, the cool thing is you've got the bolt action army. You just add a couple of these box sets, or a couple of these infantry box, the heavy infantry or the tanks, and you've got for 2 games,
right?
Yeah, I guess then you can go the other way, right? Just like you said, you can just, if somebody's not into the weird stuff, you could play with him historically or historically too.
I was very the way that the release schedule has worked out, unfortunately, in my point of view, is that the Germans have gotten a whole bunch of stuff and the Americans have gotten nothing so far. There's been a problem with the one walker they were supposed to get is almost impossible to find anywhere if you weren't able to snag one of the earliest releases that all sold out almost immediately, while the Germans have all the weird guy stuff and their heavy infantries come out. So Russ, of course, went and splurged and got it all. And I was so jealous. I don't usually talk about gaming to Karen, but I was talking to Karen all weekend going like, oh, Russ got all this cool stuff and there's nothing available for me. And I wanted to go get a bunch of regular World War II stuff, bolt action World War II stuff, and field a completely non-Weird War army against him on Tuesday, but I couldn't find enough to buy that I could get together in time, so I didn't do that. But I so wanted to just field a whole bunch of regular guys and go, I don't need any super exciting guys.
So, anywho,
Well, they are cool models. I just took a look at the vampire guy, and he's kick-ass. He's great looking.
well, let's talk about model quality here now. So I think it's important when people invest in a miniature game, right? So the good news is buying in is affordable. 100 $110 US. You're into the game with a nice sized starting force, right? But how good are the models? As miniature gamers, we want fun, good models. And so, Craig, why don't you start off with, since it's off here, we got great plastic infantry, or we got a lot of plastic infantry that all is on sprue. You got to build it. Vehicles. What were your first thoughts when you popped open that box and started putting your stuff together?
Well, I loved the fact that it came with like the tank was the real World War II tank, and then it came with the turret. The resin turret was beautiful, nice and clean, no mold lines that I needed to really do anything with. There were a couple of the injection points where I had to snip a little bit of extra resin away, but no big deal, and that was all on the bottom, so you couldn't see it anyway. The metal heavy infantry guys were great. Again, very little flashing, very little mold lines, and the plastics are great. There's so many different options on those plastic sprues. I was able to, like I talked about in achievements, I was able to make a bazooka team and a sniper team, and you can make a couple bar gunners, you can make SMG gunners, you can make regular riflemen. So you really there's pistols, and so you can make almost anything you need as far as the basic infantry goes. From your commanders to you could easily make a medic if you wanted to. There's binoculars. You could make an observer if you wanted to. So you don't need to go into all these blisters, which is one thing about if you look at the bolt action Americans in particular, you're going to see there's all kinds of cool options in blisters for winter clothing, but very little normal clothing like regular temperate zone clothing. And the reason is because you can make almost all of that stuff in the starter in the plastic infantry box, and the quality of the models themselves, hard plastic, so you can use the regular modeling glue. And I thought they were great. I think they're not quite as crisp as the GW stuff, but they're also much closer to true scale. So I think they look great. I was really, really happy, really impressed. They painted up really nicely. The walker is awesome. You put it together, it's got ball joints, so you can put it together in a bunch of different poses. And it was quick, and painting them up was fun. And there's all kinds of third-party options for you to do also, like we talked about in achievements. So you can go, if you can't find what you want from Bolt Action, you can go to Artisan or Black Tree Designs. There's all kinds of different companies that all make these World War II 28mm models. It was great.
Yeah, I'm with you. I when I started assembling the plastics, I was happy to see that polystyrene cement worked fine on them, which, as we've talked about before on the show, is the ultimate stuff to glue plastic. When you get these multi-part plastic figures where, you got to attach each arm, you got to attach the head, sometimes you got to attach legs, and you really want the polystyrene cement, and and some of these you got to glue the gun into their arms, and you can pick different weapons, and so a lot of cool options here. You want the polystyrene cement because it allows you to, they stick immediately, but you can position them. So you really need that sort of ability, and super glue would be really, really hard here. So assembling them is really easy, and I haven't seen this many options on the sprue for your models since my GW plastic days. And there's just every possible option. A lot of stuff you don't even really need, but it's cool. Like there's little crosses, the German cross medals and stuff that are by themselves in the sprue. You can clip off and put on the guy's hat, or there's different heads, so you can easily make the leader, or the commander, or the lieutenant, or the sergeant. There's a bunch of gear you can clip to their belts for no other reason just to make things look cool. But then the game's completely was a wig, so it reminded me very much of old GW days. If you want to have a Panzerfaust in the unit, you got to model a guy with a Panzerfaust, and you pay for it in points. If you want to have a submachine gun, which is different rules than a pistol, which is different rules than an assault rifle, you got to put all those on your models right. So I'm like, on the one hand, it's a little intimidating if you're a new miniature gamer, because you got to kind of figure your list build out before you build them, kind of thing. But as a GW gamer, it was brought me back to happy nostalgia of those kinds of options. And as Craig had mentioned before, because everything's so posable, I'm trying to make guys lying down. I'm making them kneeling. I'm making them sort of leaping over things, and it's just a lot of fun to do that. Had a great time with that. The other thing I want to mention is the walker went together easily for me, which I liked. The tank was such a joy to put together, and again, so many little bits. And I haven't had so much fun with a plastic tank kit, again, since my GW days, because I haven't really worked with a large plastic tank kit other than GW, right? There's not many games that actually have that.
Right.
A lot of fun with that,
we should say that large is to scale.
Yeah.
So these models aren't even as big as a Rhino in 40K.
No, but
they're
not
to scale to the actual tanks in real World War II.
They're the right scale, and I say large because if you look at a game like Antares or other games, the vehicles in this game are really small. Like they're like medium-based models. These are 2-scale tanks that are the right size, and they're just a lot of fun to put together. Yeah. And they have lots of cool detail bits like antenna and lights. It's not like the bare minimum. It's like putting together a nice World War II tank. Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, that gives you the mojo that you're putting into your army then, right? I mean, you're building that. That's become your tank now. That one soldier that you put even just a, grenade on the side or a pouch on the side, he's your guy, you know what I mean? So I think that's brilliant to get back to that WYSIWYG thing. It just helps you develop what's happening on the tabletop and lets you be part of the story by the build. So that's tremendous.
Yeah, it definitely makes you own your army more, which is a lot of fun. And at first I was like, I just want to build it quickly. It's taking me forever. But then I got into it like the second guy. I'm like, this is so much fun. I just had a blast. So I like the model quality. I think the value plus the quality you're getting is fantastic. And I think also what I'm really finding is and Craig and I talked about this when we played Dust. I enjoyed the Dust models, and I enjoyed the look on the table. These models, I think, are even
I
better.
think these models are far and away superior to the Dust.
The Dust vehicles were cool, but they were a little oversized, kind of like GW. These are the right scale, a lot more detail. The infantry is much, much better. And it replaces Dust in every way for me. Like, just the look on the tabletop is just so sweet. Right. Really like how the game looks and plays. So, but that's the model quality. So any question with the models, Teras? I mean, I think Craig and I both were really pleased with what we saw.
Yeah.
No, I think that's, like I said, that's really what I would be looking for. I would be looking how to detail it, how to make it mine. Because, I mean, no matter what miniature game you're going through, you go through I have to put this same model on the table. How do I designate that he's different from Joey A versus Joey B? And if you can do that, then that's where it really comes down for me. Walker-wise, I think you can kind of get away from it because they're all supposed to be manufactured at the same time, and you can do that as paint-wise. But if you can do it with a little bit of antennae or whatever on it, then all the better. I mean, that's an awesome way to go, and I think Warlord is pretty smart. They're going to go that way all the way through too.
I think so. Cool. So let's talk about learning the game real quick. So the rule book. So what I do like is the rule book. I was tempted to buy the big hardcover rule book, but it was hard to justify another $40-50 or whatever it is or it's $40 I think, because there it came for free in the $100 box. So I was like, I'm just going to use the little one. It is full color, which is great. There is a decent table of contents. There is no index. Boo. Why are we still not putting indexes in rule books? Seriously?
Well, and that's true, 100%, and I bemoaned it just as much as you did. But they have heard that complaint. And they have linked to an online index that you can now get and print out for the book,
which has no value because I got to keep it with the book. Just put a freaking index. Look, people, don't make a book without an index. If you're a games rules designer,
and the mistake was made. Mistakes were made, Russ. Mistakes were made.
No, that I mean, you're dealing with excuse. Your client base is a bunch of anal guys.
Not only that, these are people that have been making war games.
I mean,
very
really.
true.
Come on. Anyway, but that said. I think the rulebook's fun to read. There's some great fluff in there, and Craig read through all that. There's a great the rules sections themselves are well laid out. There's some good examples. There's some organizational issues with the book I found a little bit, but I absorbed it okay. But it was the same sort of organizational issues that were in Antares a little bit, but Antares has a better index. But anyway, thank God for things like Army Builder and Easy Army, right? So you wouldn't want to try to run your list out of this book. I mean, it's just you're cross-referencing everything all the time. That's the only problem. So to learn the game, I think it's organized well for that. So, for example, you're reading the infantry section, and there's all the special rule types for infantry, right? Fast versus heavy versus whatever. And then you're reading the vehicles, and there's all the special rules for vehicles. But the problem is, then when you want to go reference a special rule,
it's not a great reference.
Yeah, you got to go back and remember: was this a vehicle special rule? Is this an infantry special rule? And you got to go find the right section of the book. Whereas other games have figured out that you put all your keyword words in one spot, alphabetized, and you can just find them.
Right.
So it's some organization. I don't want to pick on it too much, but it's definitely one of those things where I think we can get better at that now. But there's a good section for fluff, good section for the rules. There's a great section for missions. And then there's what I love about it is
there could be more missions.
Well, there's 6. That's pretty typical nowadays. And there's a great section for the factions. So they've got every single the 4 major factions, and that'll start out in there with every single unit in there, and a lot more unit depth than I expected. They could have got away with a few basic units from Bolt Action and a few weird units, and then just come out with army books later. But they didn't. I was going through the local store and looking at some other crazy World War II models, like crazy half-tracks that fire rockets, things like the Germans had. And I'm like, I wonder if this is in Conflict. Yep, sure enough, there it is. So they have a nice depth. All the transports for your guys, all that's in there for all the factions. So a really nice depth of army lists in there as well.
What about art? What about art and photos, miniature photos, and that kind of stuff?
There's a good bit of it in the fluff section, and there's a good bit of it in the army section. Craig, what'd you think of that stuff?
The fluff?
No, the photos, pictures.
Oh, the photos. It's cool. I mean, it's a combination of pictures of the models in diorama style breakdown, of sort of schematic drawings, and some actual original artwork. And I think the quality of the original artwork is high. I think the quality of the cool schematic, like somewhere in the book is basically a Da Vinci-like schematic of each of the 4 main factions' heavy infantry, and then there's some tanks and things like that also in schematics. And so it was very visually pleasing to me. I enjoyed not only seeing like the cool artwork, I also enjoyed seeing the schematics, and I enjoyed seeing the both the diorama photos and there's a lot of pictures of just individual models sort of plugged in where they had a little space. So they might have had like a little corner of a page, and there's a Russian heavy infantry guy right there, and it says Russian heavy infantry, so you can see. Like, there's a lot of opportunities for you to look and see what the models look like, and from different positions and all kinds of cool stuff. So I thought it was really nice.
Nice.
Yeah, the one thing.
Now,
go ahead, Teras. Sorry.
No, go on. I was going to ask another question, so go ahead.
Oh well. The one thing that disappointed. Well, there's a couple things beyond the index that disappointed me. One of them was there were some things that I think Warlord got really, really right with the Gates of Antares. Things that I like to see in my sort of first time I reference a miniature game book. One of them was, Craig mentioned this, so there's 6 pretty good different missions inside the Conflict 47 rulebook, but there's like 12 inside of Antares, and what they did with Antares was said, these are missions that are balanced for sort of like a challenging fair game, and these are missions that are balanced or not balanced at all, and they're there for narrative games. And Conflict doesn't ever address the balanced and fair player set. It's really more about, and I think it's because it's leaning a little more towards the historical gamer, who we know kind of is less worried about competitive play and more about narrative. The second part is I love the terrain section in the Antares book. So there's this huge section in Antares with terrain rules for all these different kinds of terrain, and they've really thought about the terrain rules a lot, and which is very inspiring for making your own table, making your own terrain, and even dreaming up cool scenarios to use the various terrain. There is the terrain section in the Conflict 47 book is almost criminally negligent. There's nothing there.
It's tiny.
It's nothing, and it's because the game relies almost entirely on true line of sight, which I have my own problems with. So it relies way too heavily on that, I think, for terrain ideas, and it doesn't inspire you in any way for that. It does have a section about buildings, so they do spend almost a chapter on how to deal with buildings, which is cool. But like, there's not even mention of like woods versus swamp versus. And there's a little nod to roads. There's like a little tiny matrix that helps you out with basics, but it's very,
and
very
that's
basic.
all there is.
Very, very basic.
There's impassable terrain. There's rough terrain. There's roads. There's open field.
So it works.
That might even be it.
It works. It's very simple, but I would. That's something in Antares I loved because I know that's similar to bolt action, and maybe they're trying to keep this sort of so close to bolt action they are very compatible. But I loved how Antares took it to a level where they kind of added a lot of that stuff in, and they just didn't do that with Conflict. And it would have been nice to see some of the what I thought were positive things they added to Antares also added to Conflict 47. So a little disappointed with that.
I guess that comes down to detail up versus simplicity down.
Yeah,
right?
I guess you're right. Yeah. But otherwise, I thought the book was good. I absorbed the rules quickly. So
my question, or more maybe of a comment, I don't know Chris Hale very well, but I know that this rule book is really heavily based on, for my research anyways, based on bolt action, which of course is from Alessio Cavatore and Rick Priestley. So what are two of my wargaming heroes. So if anybody's kind of waffling just because of what, who wrote bolt action, it's them. So you won't be surprised at the quality of the writing or the thought put into the rules.
No, it's not. It's in the style of bolt action, and so Alessio is very so. So here's the difference, and this is where I think it's interesting. So Rick was less involved in bolt action, but he was heavily involved in Gates of Antares. And what I learned from when I read Antares, and I had not read bolt action before, and so I wasn't really sure. We talked to Rick about Gates of Antares, and I was all excited about Antares, and I still am, by the way. I love Antares. I love the sci-fi thing to it. When we were going through all that, I wasn't sure where Rick's influence started and, Alessio's ended. Now, having seen Conflict, I almost now can see the parts where Rick really influenced Antares, and I wish Rick was more involved with Conflict. Because I'm like, all this cool, crazy terrain and all this narrative stuff and and some of the cool things they did with, like, for example, they added pre-measuring to Antares. They got rid of true line of sight and added area terrain to Antares, things that make a war game just play in a way that I like more. But Alessio keeps it very, very clean and simple, which is also something I appreciate. So it's not that one's better than the other. It's just Rick's style appeals to me slightly more, and you'll notice the difference between Conflict and Antares, some of those areas. I noticed, which was interesting, more of an observation than really a complaint. But
cool.
Well, let's talk about the rules of the game here real quick. So a lot of this is similar to Antares, so we don't have to go into super, super detail because we already did Antares in the show, but let's talk about some high-level stuff here. First of all, there is no pre-measuring. The game's very clear about that. And I'll talk more about my feelings on that in my summary. And it's true line of sight, which I'll also talk about my summary, about my feelings on that. And it's a D6-based system. So like Bolt Action, it's D6s to roll to hit and roll damage and all that stuff. And remember, when we talked about Antares is neat also because it goes to D10, which made it give some interesting options there, too. But D6 is solid. I mean, we are the D6 generation, so we're going to have to like D6s, don't we? So that's all good. It uses the cool command sort of order system from Bolt Action, which I grew to love with Antares, and I'm loving here, too. And I think that's the Alessio thing, and I love it. This is just brilliant, which is this idea that for every unit you have in your army, you get an order die, and these are special die with words written on different sides for the different orders you can give. And all these dice go in the bag, and each player puts different colored dice in the bag. So I happen to be using gray dice. So if I have 10 units in my army, I put 10 gray dice in the bag. And if Craig has 11 units in the army, he puts 11 black dice in the bag. We shake the bag up, we reach inside, and we pull out a die. And if it's Craig's color, I give the die to Craig, and Craig then chooses one of the units in his army to activate. He puts the face of the die up to next to that unit, which indicates the kind of order he's giving the unit. He completes the unit's order. After he does that, we go back to the bag, pull out another die. Maybe it's Craig's die again, and he gets to go again. Or maybe it's my die, and I get to use one of my units, right? Mm-hmm. And this is really interesting because as you read the rules of the game, you'll notice that many of the combat rules favor large squads, but the dice mechanic, i.e. the more dice in the bag, the more times you get to activate, / the chance you get to go first when you want to, favors lots of squads. So you might be tempted to make lots of small, cheap squads. But there are some really cool game mechanics that really kind of encourage you to make big, expensive squads. So you're fighting this battle in your mind between, do I want lots of little squads for lots of orders, or do I want lots of big, powerful squads, which give me less orders, right, for my points.
Right.
But it's a really cool mechanic, and it gives us all kinds of cool options. And we've talked about that before, but we'll get to it as we go through the thing. So really, that's the big part of the game. You reach in the bag, you pull out a die, you activate a unit, and the rest of the game is all about what are the kind of orders you can give units and how do the units interact when you do that, right? Is it making sense so far, Teras? Yeah,
actually, I read something that was really interesting on Bolt Action about that. they said there was a lot of worry about bolt action kind of slowing down with larger scale armies. Like we're talking maybe 2,000 points instead of your guys' 1,000 points. And their solution to that was to actually give a die for a percentage of the army. So let's just say it's a quarter. One die represents a quarter of your army, so you can move a quarter of your army with one die. So it just takes it bogging down from in bigger games. You can set of it bogging down to, okay, which squad is going to, oh, these 3 squads are going, or these 3 squads are going, to speed up the game when it becomes a larger game.
So they added some cool mechanics in Antares for that too, which was interesting. So in the Gates of Antares, there are commanders who, when you give them an order, they can give a similar order to all units near them. So they can activate bulk units of guys. That mechanic does not exist in Conflict 47. And Craig and I were actually a little disappointed not to see that there. We're like, oh, that was a cool mechanic. But as we play the game, we're finding ourselves not missing it in smaller games. But given your example there, I could see that being a great mechanic in larger games to be able to move huge chunks of your army at a time. So, But again, and I think there's now the other rumors we should say is there's Bolt Action 2 coming out.
Right.
And Bolt Action 2 is going to, the rumor has it, there's a bunch of improvements in there. Some of them are ideas from Antares and other things. What we don't know is how will that influence Conflict, if at all. Right. Will they just leave Conflict out on its own with what it's got for rules? Will there be a supplement that brings your Conflict rules compatible with Bolt Action 2? There's rumors in Bolt Action 2 that some of those ideas of one unit being able to order multiple units is going to be added. We don't know. So that's a little up in the air. But anyway, who cares? This is a great self-contained game. but there's some cool stuff there.
I will say something more about this dice system for basically initiative. I mean, a lot of people complain about the I go, you go type of thing, and this is an incredible solution to that. It just makes the game so much more exciting because it gives you this anticipation and dread at the same time, and I think it's an awesome system and should be incorporated for a lot of games.
I love it, and Craig and I have grown to love it too, and I think that's really the magic of Antares and this, and it's that little bit of uncertainty, and so you can't plan to know what to do next, and you can't even plan to know. Sometimes you want to go first, sometimes you really want to go second because you're setting yourself up for your opponent. Like we played last night. Craig just kept pulling his own dice in turn one. He's like, "Oh, this is sucking," because he's
killing me.
He's exposing his whole, which is kind of interesting because in a conventional game, he would move his entire side first. But in this moment, like, no, stop. And then later, you want to go early because now all of a sudden you're set up. What's interesting is when you end that turn, and I get the last move of the turn, for example, and I'm getting my zombies are getting really close to Craig's line. In the next turn, it's going to matter. If Craig draws his own die, he'll be able to gun those zombies down. If I draw my die, the zombies can move. And first, so it really gets interesting, and you're really wishing for that sort of thing. But then you have all this stuff with reactions we'll talk about in a second, too, which make things even more interesting. So let's just go through the orders real quick. They're pretty simple. First, you have the advance order. The advance order is your standard run-of-the-mill. Your guys move, and they shoot. And most types of units have standard speeds. So infantry moves 6, vehicles move 12, roughly, right? Depending on the vehicle type, with tracked or walkers or whatever. So you advance and you shoot. There are advantages for if you move and shoot, you got to take a -1, things like that. But it's pretty simple, right? If you want to run's another order. If you run, you just double your movement, basically, and you don't get to shoot. That's pretty simple. If you want to fire is another order, and that's the best way to shoot because you don't take any modifiers for moving. So this is interesting. So in Antares, you get +1 to hit. In Bolt Action and in Conflict, there's a minus for moving and shooting, but there's no minus if you used a fire order. So basically, you're remaining still. The fire order basically is just that you shoot and you don't move. Then there's the ambush order, which is one of my favorite orders to pull off. The ambush order, you put it down next to your unit, and it basically means your unit is essentially on what you used to call Overwatch. They are watching for the enemy to move, and then during your opponent's turn, if he activates a unit to move in their line of sight, you can choose to basically say, all right, pause where you are, I'm going to shoot you, and you can open fire, right?
Which is awesome.
Which is very awesome. And then last but not least is the down order, which you wouldn't normally give voluntarily, although there might be times you
but you totally can. There's a lot of, if you're getting shot at by, for instance, the Americans have this awesome half-track that they designed to use for anti-aircraft in World War II that has 4 50 caliber machine guns firing from a single coaxial turret. However, they called it the meat chopper or the meat grinder, I think, because the crews soon learned, wow, if we just tilt it down a little bit, we can shoot it at people.
Right.
So imagine if I'm about to shoot that at you, and you're going to get 12 50 caliber shots downrange at you. You can go down as a reaction, and all of a sudden, I've got a further -1 to hit you.
Exactly. So that's a big deal.
In addition, artillery, if you're about to get hit with artillery, going down halves the number of hits you take from artillery.
Right. So you do
yeah,
want to go down
cool.
sometimes, but usually what happens with down is it's a
I think that
bad
might just be
thing
us.
that happens, right?
We don't go down voluntarily.
Not very often.
Other people might.
But usually that'll happen because you fail you typically fail a morale check when you're trying to give an order. So how this works is when you take there's one other factor in the game, and that's the pin markers, which is great. And this is Antares is the same thing, and so does bolt action. So what happens is when you shoot, let's describe shooting for a second. It's pretty simple. Yeah. So your basic chance to hit with shooting is always a 3+. So you're rolling
matter who you are.
Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what your training level is. You roll a d6. If you get a 3 or better, you hit the guy. But there's tons of modifiers, and there's a great. I will say this: while there's no table of contents, but there's no index. There is a great quick reference in the back of the book.
Yeah,
and that quick reference has all the information in it. So there's modifiers to hit when you shoot, and those modifiers include things like: is the enemy over half range? Because that's long range shot, it's -1. Did you move? That's a -1. Are you shooting through light cover? That's a -1. Are you shooting through heavy cover? That's a -2. And since you're on a D6, remember, and the thing about this is a lot of times, since you're moving and shooting, or it's over half range, you're looking at a -1 or a -2 already. So when a 3+ sounds really easy, there's often initially a -1, quite frequently a -2. When you're at -2, you're only hitting on a 5 or a 6. And if you get to -3, you're only hitting a 6. What I do like is there's this nice core rule to the game, which is if you ever need more than a 6 to hit, there's always a chance to hit if you can roll a 6 and a 6. So basically, you can if you've got 10 shots and you're only hitting on, let's say you need 8 to hit, you roll them, any 6 you get, you roll again. If that dice comes up a 6 again, you can manage to hit at a really crazy, hard to hit shot. So that's kind of a nice, you always have a chance.
Yeah.
But so generally speaking, though, if your opponent's using cover effectively and he's at long range and you're moving, it's really hard to hit people, right? You got to kind of be stationary or be close or have your enemy be like an idiot standing in the wide open, right? Mm-hmm. The good news is even if you hit them and do no damage, though, you get to put a pin marker on them, which are those cool little explosions that come in the box.
Yep.
And then pins, like Gates of Antares and Bolt Action, every pin on your unit is a -1 to any of their morale checks, and it's a -1 to all your chances to shoot. So when you're shooting, also a modifier is a -1 for every pin marker on you. So the more pins on you, also the less effective you become as well, right?
Yep.
So that's shooting in a nutshell. But then you got to wound the guys after you shoot them. And here's where the quality of your troops come in. So when you're paying for your troops and building your list, you can build them as regulars or veterans, or what are they called? Inexperienced in some cases, right? Mm-hmm. And this is based on how experienced your troops are, is how hard to wound them. And the fluff on this is really experienced guys are really, really good at being in cover or using the ground to their best advantage or just not standing up to be shot easily or whatever. So they're just harder to hurt. So basically, if they're inexperienced, you're wounding them on a 3. So like zombies are inexperienced, just like walking straight at you. So you wound them on 3s very easily.
Yeah.
Normal guys are wounded on 4s. Veterans are on 5s. And super elite guys, actually like heavy armor dudes are like
heavy
6+.
armor dudes.
Yeah. So basically, then you're rolling to wound, and that's pretty much the deal. And the only trick to this is if you're firing at vehicles, vehicles have an armor penetration you got to roll higher than, and weapons have an armor penetration value that adds plus to your die roll for that. So like a walker might be a 7+. So small arms, which have no armor penetration bonus, can't hurt a walker, but a like a grenade, like a bazooka, Craig, is like what, +4?
I think it's +5.
+5. So Craig rolls it. So if Craig hits my walker, then instead of rolling to wound my guy, he rolls his penetration roll, adds the +5. If he gets 7 or better, he has damaged the walker, and then he rolls on a table in the book, and it tells us what happens. It might stun the walker, it might destroy the walker, whatever.
Might make it on fire. It might immobilize it.
Yes. But the great thing is, those rules are all right in the back of the book. Very, very simple. There's some cool rules in there, too, like it's a -1 to your armor penetration roll if you're over half range. It's a +1 to your armor penetration roll if you're shooting the vehicle in the side. It's +2 if you're shooting it in the butt. So very simple rule set, as you pointed out earlier, Teras. Very simple rule set that it covers a lot of cool stuff, like I don't want to get shot in the back or the side as a tank, that kind of thing.
And it going on fire and that kind of thing just adds to the story, right? And that's kind of what I'm all about on a tabletop, is all about the story, and that's kind of what I like to see.
If you're all about the story, let me tell you about my bazooka team. Because last night they got shot to hell because Russ was scared of them from the week before. It's right out of a World War II movie, because you've got these two guys. And they're working completely independently from the rest of my army. So it's not like a squad that has a missile launcher or anything. It's these two guys, which makes them harder to hit because there's only two guys. That's another one of the modifiers. And you have to get really close. It's only a 24-inch range. So it's a -1 if you're outside of 12. It's a further -1 because it's a shaped charge, which means you have to hit the target exactly right or it won't work. It'll just glance off. So it's -2 if you're outside of 12, no matter what else is going on. It's -2, -3 if you move. So my guys are they're like running around trying to get a shot off on his little walker. And there was just happened to be one turn where the walker used the road to move forward. And they had a clean shot on him from where they were, so they didn't have to move. But they still took all those other negatives, and they got him. And
that's awesome.
It was awesome because it's like, as I said, it's bazooka. It's +5. So the armor of the walker was what, a 7?
7
Russ?
plus, yeah. So pretty much he got me.
Yeah. So I was like popped him. Mm-hmm. It was I hit him earlier with something else, and I just did a glancing blow and stunned him. But yeah, then it was awesome. And that last turn, the game we had last night, because he had seen that happen, again, they were running cover to cover, moving slowly around. I had them basically surrounded by my army, and then all of a sudden, he wiped out one of my units. They ran away because they took too many casualties and they failed their morale test. And my bazooka team was just way out in the open, and his guys just started gunning for him. They were hiding behind this bridge, and they just couldn't make it.
It was actually my commander and his second in command armed with assault rifles came around the corner of the bridge and gunned them down. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was. Our game last night was just full of little stories like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what you want, right? You wanted to make sure that you have if you can come back with a story that feels like a movie, that's the Zen moment for me. That's when you've actually succeeded in wargaming, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what. Yep. That's exactly what you want.
And there was another there's another good element like that too, Teras, which was great. And again, there was simple rules. So when you do moving with vehicles, there's a restriction on the number of 90-degree turns you can take. So when you advance with like a tracked vehicle, it can turn 90 degrees once at either the start or the end of its movement, right, Craig? Is that it? Or is it once in the middle?
I think it's just 90 degrees during its
90
move.
degrees once during its move.
I think. We're going to get a couple of these rules wrong.
But the walkers can do it twice, I think, because they're agile, right? So there's this one part we're fighting over this bridge, and this bridge is this giant curved bridge, and it's big enough that our tanks couldn't see each other when we're both flat on the other side of the bridge. So right now our tanks are on each opposite side of the bridge, and I'm watching Craig's tank very carefully because I know, and so this is very much a classic tank commander moment. I want his tank, his Tesla cannon is the most powerful tank killer in the game.
But very short range.
So I know if I expose my gravity gun tank against his tank, he will kill me. Now, at this point, my vampires, this is part of the story, my vampires are hiding under the bridge, and the goal for us is to capture this bridge. So my vampires are in this little tunnel under this bridge, and Craig has to route the vampires. So he's moving infantry up along the side of the bridge.
I've killed everything else.
So what I want to do
damn vampires.
My goal is to save the vampires because they're nesting under the bridge and we'll control the bridge at the end of the game for at least a tie. So my tank is hiding by the bridge. I want to break the tank left, but I know at this point Craig hasn't committed his tank to turn either left or right. Once he commits a turn with that tank, because of the rate of how you only get 1 90-degree turn per movement, there's to be no way for him to turn the tank completely around in time to come to the opposite flank. So I'm trying to get him to lure him. So I'm trying to do things to get him to lure his tank. So it's totally like this game of like outmaneuver happening with a very simple mechanic, which is you only get to turn once 90 degrees when you move your vehicle. You don't need a fancy template, anything else. Just that simple rule really makes your tanks feel much less flexible and mobile than your walkers, which still feel much less flexible and mobile than your infantry, which is neat.
Yeah.
Right. You have this bulk that is created by the rules, and that's awesome. I mean, and to speak to Craig's feel there, that's like an enemy at the gate scene. You know, you have that.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. I can see. Oh my God, I can see him right now, and then that's when you fire like that. Kind of thing. For me,
you want to know my enemy at the gates moment, Teras, was that I had a sniper. I had a sniper team that was huddled down next to this building, and they had they ignore cover if they stay still and take a fire order. And so I'm looking at his command unit, and I'm looking at those 2 damn vampires.
Yes.
And every turn, I would be like, okay, so, I mean, a sniper is awesome when he's going against a squad. He's slightly less awesome when he's going against a team because he's got a -1 because of the team. He's far less awesome if he's going against a team of veterans because you only wound him on a 5 or 6. So I'm like, the HQ. I gotta take the HQ out because his HQ are lethal with their assault rifles, or do I just keep trying to? So eventually, I had a squad take out his HQ, and the sniper for the last 2 turns of the game was just taking shots, and I could hit the vampires with almost no problem, but I just couldn't wound them. Or Russ made 5+ tough saves.
Yeah, so the
vampires,
the vampires and the werewolves have a special rule, and the zombies also that is basically tough. So after they take their wound if I roll a 5 or 6, they ignore it. So so the vampires just got really lucky, and he kept pinning him and shooting him, but they kept making those tough saves, and he couldn't kill them. So it was awesome. I just imagined him kept healing and eating the dead bodies.
I just imagine my sniper getting more and more frustrated. And I know I'm hitting the bastard.
So
it's so awesome. When you have, like I said, it's all about that story. For me, that's working.
Our game last night was full of story.
So one of the things we should mention,
and when you can tell other people about it, that's the thing, right? That's what makes people smile.
And what makes the story even more compelling, and this is again a part of this dice mechanic. So one thing we didn't mention is that when you pull a die out of the bag and you go to give an order to a unit, that happens automatically unless the unit has some number of pins on it, 1 or more pins. If that happens, you must make a morale check to give the unit the order you want. Otherwise, it takes a down order instead. And when it makes the morale check, it's -1 for every pin on the unit. Yeah. So what was interesting about this, there was a couple moments in the game that got really cool. So first of all, we learned this in Antares, that just getting at least 1 pin on a unit is totally worth your time because you'll be surprised how often even units with like a 9 leadership with a -1, it's now an 8, will fail that pretty often more often than you expect. Yeah. But what's really cool about it is all the other modifiers. So if you get 2 or 3 pins on a unit, now that 9 leadership is a 7 or a 6. And now it's getting pretty serious. So what was pretty cool was Craig had one of these units that was sneaking up on the vampires and got really close to the vampires and was trying to get a nice good shot. And there were 2 guys left. They had a couple pins on them because my gravity tank's firing at them. They're shooting at the vampires. But what happens is the vampires have a special rule called horror. And if you're within 6 inches of them, you get an additional -1 in your leadership checks. So now Craig's at a -3 and he couldn't do it. These guys are like panicking in the bushes. They didn't want to move. They're like, oh God. And it was great. It was just one of those cool moments, again, where story's happening.
Right.
And you tend to like, it's just really neat. Go ahead, Teras.
And that goes down to just a little bit of awesomeness in the rules.
Yes.
Like that small rule mechanic is huge to the story. That's again what I dig. Now I'll say something else about your tank experience, Russ. For me, not only does that give you a little story, but what it feels like is that you get the feel of old time technology, how bulky and hard to control it was and everything like that. So those 90-degree turns actually tell a story in itself and give a vibe to the whole thing. This is a tank in World War II. It's not, a Hummer or something like that. You get this feel of the past with the rules, and I think that's awesome.
That's right.
And I'll also mention one thing about the pinning and morale system. I know that from my research, that's one of the most favorite things about the whole game and bolt action in general. And I think that I'm super happy that they included that into this game because that intrigues me also. Anything that can create morale issues is awesome because it's so overlooked in so many games, and it actually causes you to be worried about having a morale issue, and you being worried about having a morale issue creates more of a vibe that you're in the game.
Yes.
And again, it's all about that story. And then if you can create this vibe that, are you worried about this? Well, yes, I am. Well, then I'm in the story. You know what I mean? It's like watching a movie.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
like Russ is saying, where he's laying out pins on all my guys, I had a turn where my walker could have probably gone around and gotten into a position with the vampires, but I failed my check because he had 1 pin on him.
Oh, that's
and so
really?
I had my snipers had a pin on them, my walker had a pin on them, and my heavy troopers had a pin on them. and none of them got wounded, but they all had a pin. And so I had my commander out there, and it was again right out of a movie. He had to run around the tank so he could scream at the walker. Then he had to run around the tank so he could scream at the heavy guys. And then he ran around the tank so he could scream at. I had another infantry squad that had a pin and the sniper. So he ran between the two of them so he would be within 6 inches of either of them, because the commanders give a bonus to their to the leadership checks to anybody within 6 inches of them. So that was another that my HQ guy was running around. And I just want to really quickly. I got the HQ pack, the blister pack, and it came with an artillery observer, and so I wanted to use everything I had last night. And the artillery rules are pretty straightforward. They're not great in the mission that we played last night because he didn't start on the board. But basically, if he takes a fire action, he can place a token anywhere on the table that he can see, and then starting at the beginning of next turn, you roll a die, and it like artillery land on a 4, 5, or 6, artillery hits that position and any unit within 6 plus D6 inches of that token. And for most of them on a 1 through 4, they're just going to take D3 pins as they get shaken by nearby blasts. But on a 5 or 6, they get hit with 3 D6 hits as they get hit directly. So
record one of my units last night. Yeah,
it like totally wiped out one unit and then put a pin on another unit. But it was like later in the game because that guy had to come onto the board as a reserve. But that was just another example of this little
awesome.
guy that was so cool.
But then again, you're getting this how effective that weapon is, right? That's just awesome.
Yep. So one other core mechanic we should mention is the reaction system. So like we talked about in Antares, there is a in bolt action, there's a very robust reaction system in the game. So if your unit already has a die next to it, it's already received an order, it cannot react. However, if it has not, and this mitigates who gets to go first a little bit, you can react in certain situations. So if, for example, you declare you're going to shoot a unit and the unit doesn't have a dice on it, you can react in a couple different ways. If you're within 20 inches of each other, you can do a fire reaction, which basically means I put one of my dice next to my unit that's reacting, and I put fire on it, and we're going to have simultaneous shooting. So Craig's unit that declared fire on my unit, I'm going to fire right back at you at the same time. I did this last night in our battle because I knew his unit was going to do a lot of damage to me, so I might as well fire back while I've got full effect and at least try to get something on him. To do a reaction, you have to make a reaction check, which is just a leadership check, but again, you're modified for any pins. So another good example of this is when you go to assault somebody. So if you go to assault a unit, they can react and shoot you. They can also react and do escape, which means they can try to run away, move away, and they might get lucky and move far enough away where you can't get them anymore. But if they shoot you, they can get a free shot on you before you move. So that's huge. So this reminds me, this again is the war tactic of suppression and everything else. What you really want to do is get enough pins on a unit before you assault it, so they're likely to fail their reaction check, right? And then also it's important because in hand-to-hand combat, your hit rolls are also modified by your pins. So what you're really hoping for is get enough pins on people that they really won't be very effective in hand-to-hand combat, then you assault them and take them out, right? So it's really all about disrupting them before you go in there, right?
I heard that assaults are completely bloody in bolt action, and that units kind of disappear if there's assaults. Is that kind of true with Conflict too?
Well, yeah, it's pretty bad. So what happens is that, to describe an assault real quick, it's pretty simple. You declare a run action, and if one of your models can get base-to-base with one of the other enemy models, then pretty much your whole unit just moves up and gets base-to-base. And what you're going to do is, first of all, the defender can try to react, like I described. But even if he doesn't react, then he can decide if anybody's going to do point-blank shooting. You can choose between point-blank shooting or regular hand-to-hand combat. Point-blank shooting goes first, and then hand-to-hand combat goes second, right? Point-blank shooting basically means you shoot your guns, but you can't use heavy weapons. And then hand-to-hand combat means you just swing your hand-to-hand combat weapons. So it's usually one die for each person. The mechanics of doing damage, hitting and doing damage, is identical no matter which way you choose. But some units have special rules, like the vampires, for example, get 3 dice each in hand-to-hand combat instead of 1, and they have no guns to choose. But their horror ability means that they strike first, which is kind of nice. Most other people, though, are throwing 1 die in hand-to-hand combat, or they're probably going to want to shoot instead, right? And that's pretty much it. But the thing is, after the battle's over, you take a pin if you took any casualties, and then the side who lost the most loses and must make a morale check, and if they fail, they're destroyed. So that right there can make it very bloody. If they succeed, if there's a draw at the end, everybody runs, the winner then can decide to press the combat and do one more round, or you break up and both consolidate. It's over. So, but typically what happens is lots of people die because there's lots of shooting. So someone reacted on the way in and they shot, let's say, and then they point blank range fired again, let's say, and so that can be like 20 dice of guns going off, and then there's hand-to-hand combat, and then whatever's left usually, is destroyed in a morale check. So it's ugly. It's ugly. We didn't have any situations where 2 units survived hand-to-hand combat. It was typically one that was wiped out. It was always me usually, but once I was wiped out and the other side got away, kind of thing. Yeah. Very, very bloody. Nice. But that's for the most part the game, really, right? I mean, what's left really here is a bunch of the unit special rules, which you kind of highlighted on the way through there. Some of the units have a lot of the weapons have special rules. So, for example, there's not really army-specific weapons. There's actually a giant list of all the different weapon types that everybody has access to. Like, so every faction has something called the super heavy anti-tank gun, or every faction has some kind of light machine gun. But the difference is that some of the factions have special rules on those weapons, right? Like, one of my tank turrets is a gravity gun, and a gravity gun has special rules around a unit gets weighed down and can't run next turn, or it does more damage against heavily armored tanks, that kind of thing. So all that's baked into the game in those special rules, really.
Right.
Cool.
Let's talk. Oh, go ahead, Teras.
No, I was going to say, again, developing the story, right?
Right, exactly.
Allowing you to distinguish between one unit and another.
Yeah. We're going a little long, but I do want to talk briefly about list building. So, Craig, the list building is pretty straightforward, right? It's basically, there's a platoon structure rule. Can you describe it real quick?
Yeah, the platoon structure rule says you have to have an HQ, which can be an individual guy. And the cool thing is the reason that the point system is so flexible and what was an 800-point list could easily get up over 1,000 is because for almost every unit, you're choosing whether it's going to be inexperienced, regular, or veteran, and an inexperienced unit has some extra negative rules attached to it, and its command is lower, and it's -1 to hit, so they're to hit when it's shooting. So they're cheaper than a regular unit, which is cheaper than a veteran unit. And when you're choosing your HQ, you choose one of those three, and you choose a lieutenant or a second lieutenant, which all affect how good they're going to be to project their leadership. And then you need 2 infantry squads. And then for every reinforced platoon, you can have 3 more infantry squads. You can have 1 of each kind of infantry team, or in some cases 2. You can then have 1 tank. You can have 1 light tank or scout car or light walker. And you can have a transport for every infantry or team unit that you have. And so if you've got more than 5 infantry squads, you're going to have a second platoon, or you can have more than 1 platoon if you want to have multiple tanks or multiple walkers and things like that. You just want to spread your infantry out, and that's universal. So that reinforced platoon structure is for every nationality. And then the individuality comes with what are those infantry squads, and what weapons can they have, and what special rules do they have, and what teams do you have access to, and what tanks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it might look a little bit like you're all making Imperial Guard armies, but they've all, especially with the Konflikt 47 version, they've all got very cool things that set them apart from everybody else also.
There's your balancing act and your differential at the same time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So,
and it's cool. You might want to have some of your teams be veterans and some of your teams be regular. So because you can't underestimate how cool it is when your guys can only get wounded on a 5 or 6.
Yes. It's very nice. So
yeah. Talk about some vampires.
Right.
I heard that in bolt action anyway, air support is kind of abstracted. Is there any way to build in air support in Konflikt?
It's funny you should ask. It works almost exactly like the artillery. So you have an air observer who comes on, and instead of picking a point on the table, he picks any unit that he can see. And that token with that unit sticks with that unit through the whole game. And at the beginning of every turn, before you pull any dice out of the bag, you roll a d6. On a 1, it's terrible, and the plane accidentally shoots your own guys, which is exactly what happens with the artillery. The artillery is the same way. On a 1, it goes off, but the enemy can place the token anywhere they want, or move it 10 inches or something like that. And on a 2 or a 3, the airplane doesn't get there in time, but if you want, you can shift the token to another unit. Let's say the unit is getting too close to one of your units. And then on a 4, 5, or 6, the airplane comes in and makes its attack. The problem with air support, and the reason that it's cheaper than artillery, is that there's 3 different kinds. You're either going to get a fighter strafing, a ground attack, or like a fighter bomber doing like 50-50, or you're going to have a ground attack craft come in with massive cannons or bombs. So you don't know if it's going to be really good against infantry, really good against really good against vehicles, or metza against both. So it's really random.
Yeah,
you have no idea who the air is sending you.
Who they're going to send you. So he just kind of shows up. And so what happens is when you roll a 4, 5, or 6, you measure out, I think it's 18 inches. You put your plane down where it's going to make the attack. And then anybody within range and line of sight, and line of sight is anybody basically because you can't hide an airplane, who has a flak special rule on any of their weapons, those weapons automatically get to shoot at the airplane. And if the airplane gets hit 6 times or more, it either peels off or it blows up, so it doesn't get its attack off. So anti-aircraft is also very abstracted, and you get anything with flak gets to shoot at the aircraft whether or not it's already gone. So that's pretty cool. So if I had one of those meat grinder half tracks, let's say, if I had just ordered one, let's say, not saying that I have, but let's say if I had. Because I just spent 3 days thinking that it was out of print. If I had just found one and ordered it, let's say, and then my German compatriot decided to send an airplane my way, my 50 cals might or might not be shooting at that airplane. Yeah. But then I've only got 12 dice, and I have to hit. I have to hit six times out of 12. So. But it's still really cool.
Right.
So yeah, so it's it's abstracted, but it's not so abstracted that you can't see the story.
Right.
No, you see the story in your half track.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
right?
Who shows up. You roll a 1, you get that sinking feeling when you see the 1. It's awesome. Also cool because anybody within a certain number of inches of the unit gets attacked goes down. Friend and foe, because your guys don't know. Oh, and your guys, if your guys are in range and have a flak weapon, they have to make a leadership test not to fire at the plane.
See, that is
because
awesome.
how many movies do you see where there's just a plane and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's one of ours! Yay, he's shooting at us! I mean, it's crazy.
No, see, that is awesome. I get a lot of discussions about randomization in games and a lot of hate on that. I love that stuff to death. I mean, just this whole air thing. The air thing actually compels me in a lot of ways more than some of the other stuff. I mean, just to have it so you have no idea. That sinking feeling, again, sinking feeling puts you into the game. Not takes you out. It puts you in. Yeah.
Well, I think people who really enjoy the story don't mind the randomness as much as people who want like a competitive game where the playing surface is completely even, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's true.
So I guess it depends. Like I want the story. Russ wants the story. You want the story. These like Russ played orcs for how many years?
Right.
They were all random.
So that's pretty much the game. We're going a little long, so let's get to our final thoughts. But before we do our final thoughts, Craig. Craig, in the style of a World War II veteran spotting a werewolf for the first time.
Okay.
Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Okay. All right, you grunts, listen up. You've heard they've got them really big bad guys out there, but we're badder. We're the worst. And as soon as you see them coming up over the ridge, you're just going to let them have it. Louis, you're going to let them have it with the bar? Yes, you're going to let them have it. Yeah, you're going to let them have it. Billy, you're going to let them have it with the SMG? Ain't going to have range, son. That's okay. You just hold that for later. If it comes up, now, Now, admittedly, we don't know exactly how bad they're going to be. So when they come up over there, if they're like really, really bad, let's say like they're really terrifying, they're going to be really powerful, really useful, I'm gonna scream out a rating. And the ratings, I'm going to say 2. 2 is terrifying, we run. Okay? And 6 is like, oh my God, it's my grandma, and we're just going to light her up. Okay? Here they come. Here they
Nice. Nice wolf roar. I like it, Craig. Very well done.
Yes, very good.
That totally made up for last time.
So clearly, 2 is good, or low is good,
Yes.
high is bad on the D6G rating system.
All right, Craig. So you want to start here?
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
I love the game. The cinematics are great. I love being involved once again with a game that has so many units that I already can get. I mean, I'm anxious to get my more Wierd War units, but I'm so excited just because I have access to all these other units that are already out there. So it's a very cool, you've got the brand new game smell, but at the same time, you've got the depth of support of a long-standing game. So that's great.
Right.
I love the die mechanic of the activations. I love everything about this game that comes from or is the same as Antares. I love the reaction system. I wish they had gone with a D10 because it gives you more granularity. But I get that you have an entire community that's played this game for years with the D6, and you don't want to like alienate them. So I get that. I can't shake the feeling that I'm playing a slightly unfinished game because they haven't gone all the way with some of their things where they could have gone in the direction of Antares with the terrain, like we said, like the command rules, as we said. And I wish that was there. But at the same time, I wonder how much of an impact that would really have. I mean, I used it a lot, especially the more games of Antares we played, the more I used those command rules. So I think they're very cool. But at the same time, it is what it is. I feel like there's a few other things. I know they fixed a lot of things in Bolt Action 2 that people didn't like in Bolt Action 1 that are still in Konflikt 47. So that seems like an odd choice to me. And I'm not sure if I am playing a game that was a little bit rushed or a little bit not quite finished, or if I'm playing a game where they wanted to differentiate their product and make it so this is Konflikt 47, not quite Bolt Action. They're slightly different. So I'm not sure where I'm going to settle out on that. Right now, I'm a little unsettled, feeling like I'm playing with a product that's not entirely where it's going to end up. So as Russ said, I'm not sure what all these changes are. Like when Bolt Action 2 comes out and all the machine guns have +1 attack die, am I going to be like, oh, I wish mine had it, or I'm okay because we're playing Konflikt 47, so nobody has it except those pesky Germans, or are they going to say, okay, now everybody use these rules from Bolt Action 2? So I'm a little leery about that, but it's standing alone as a game in and of itself. I really enjoyed it. The models are great. I love that activation system. I really enjoyed the fact it's hard to figure out when you're making your army. Like you look at the army book or the army selection and the units, and they don't have any stats at all. It's just like, this is what they are. They are an infantry. But what you then realize, and you have to just kind of learn through through playing, everybody moves 6 inches. I mean, like all infantry have this move, all walkers have this move, all track units have this move. So it doesn't matter. It's not everybody doesn't have a different move. Everybody hits on a 3+, and then you factor in your modifiers. Everybody who's a veteran gets wounded on a 5+. So everybody. All you need to know is what type you are and what quality you are. And you're good to go. So that took a little while for me to kind of figure out. And it's still, I would like to look down at my sheet and see like those stats, because I'm still going to the play sheet that the starter box came with, which is exactly the thing that's in the back of the book. So either way, you've got it. But I like it. I like it a lot. And I like it more even than I thought I was going to like it, which I'm excited about. And the fact that we could have a game last night that that we played, just the second game that we played, we saw almost every one of the advanced rules from the rule book in that game last night. And it was relatively easy to find. I mean, an index would have made it, we would have saved us 20, 30 minutes total if there was an index. But I really enjoyed it, and so many cinematic moments, which is really what I'm after. So I feel like I'm looking at what Antares could be, like maybe 5 years down the road, when it's got all kinds of units and everybody's got plastics, so everyone can afford to play. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed it. I hope it stays in the rotation. I really hope it stays in the rotation because I just spent a lot of money. And I love the modeling. I felt like I was getting back to my roots a little bit. So I'm gonna say a 3+. So any gamer rolls a die, they're gonna like this game on a 3+. And I'm gonna say if you like World War II and weirdness, it's obviously a 2+.
Nice,
so +1.
Well, that's a strong rating, sir.
Well, I think it's a strong game.
Good. Well, Teras, we'll let you go last so you can kind of give us your chance. You're deciding to want to play it based on our final thoughts here. So,
by all means.
So I'm with you, Craig. A couple things. What saves the playability is Craig's talking about, like, not all the rules are in one spot easily, but the way you get around that is use either Easy Army, which is an online army builder tool for the Warlord Game systems, and they do use Conflict 47 already.
Which is free.
It's free. It prints out a list. You can also use Army Builder, of course, but it prints out a list.
But check it, because there's a couple errors. I found that my Tesla tank lacks one MMG that Easy Army said I had.
But in any case, it's very easy to use. It has all the quick reference stuff on the page. So it makes life much easier. Couple things about the rules that I'm disappointed in. I don't like no pre-measuring. That feels dated to me now, and I know that's probably to appeal to the older bolt action rule set, and I don't know if they're going to change it in bolt action 2, but I'd like to see that change. I think I love it in War Machine now. I love it everywhere else. I wish it was here. Also, I don't like True Line of Sight. I don't know what it is about True Line of Sight I don't like. Well, I do know what it is I don't like about True Line of Sight. So having not True Line of Sight, having terrain rules, does mean you have to have a terrain section in your book, which they can get away without now because they don't have that. But it also makes the game just play faster because you just look across, you're shooting across the swamp. Okay, well, that's -1, or you're shooting. But in this case, it's not really that because that was True Line of Sight. How much I got to figure out percentage of model, and then you always get debates going on, and you got to look down at the table, unless a forest has it. Someone built a forest with exactly a realistic number of trees. It doesn't really block line of sight realistically, right? So it's like. But then if you build a forest with lots of trees in it, then you can't put models inside the forest. So it takes away from playability, doesn't add to it, and I think it slows the game down and tends to spark arguments. So I'm really disappointed in the True Line of Sight. Also, I like the D6s. I think they did a good job with them. But in order to get some mechanics that are in, like Antares, for example, one of the rules in Antares, which I like, is that whenever you roll a natural 10, something extra good happens, and whenever you roll a natural 1, generally something bad happens. So for an example of this is when you're shooting models and doing wounds. In both these games, the defender always picks who dies unless you get a really good shot. And so in Antares, a really good shot is a natural 10. So if I roll a natural 10, I get to pick who dies. I can kill his sergeant, I can kill his machine gunner or whatever, and that's bad. So in this game, it's the same sort of thing, but how it works is whenever you roll a 6, you roll that die again, and if you roll another 6, it's a really good shot, and you pick who dies. But it just slows the game down a little bit. Now you got to roll certain dice twice. So it's a small thing, but there was a D10 thing that was nice. Mm-hmm. I love the dice system of the game. The order system is fantastic. I love the models. I think I said it like 30 times playing last night. The game just looks awesome on the table. I was so sad when Dust Warfare failed because I love how that game looks. I don't miss Dust Warfare at all anymore. This game nails everything I liked about Dust Warfare, the order system, the morale, the blast markers, the look of the models. The models are better looking. The table, that experience of Wierd War is just perfectly captured here. And as Craig pointed out, having that entire stable, it was so brilliant of them to just reuse the models for bolt action and add this onto it because now it really does flesh out. It's almost a shame they couldn't come out with a bolt action expansion that was K-47. Like it's almost a shame the core bolt action rules just aren't the core bolt action rules, and you just have almost an army book that adds on the special rules for Wierd War stuff. Because then, when bolt action moved to bolt action 2, it would still all work, right? It's almost a shame this isn't. It's almost a shame this isn't really the War Machine Horde situation, which is, you can play pure Horde, you can play pro War Machine, you can play them together, and it all works. It's almost a shame it's not quite that, because that would have been so sweet. But even so, it's still really cool. Yeah, I think so too. But I like it a lot. I think it's exactly what I wanted, and the timing for me personally could be better with the acquisition of my airbrush, because this is just an airbrusher's dream, and I'm totally loving doing the nice detailed plastic vehicle kits again. I miss building those so much, and so few games actually have that. Really, really nice. So I'm with you, Craig. I think this is a 3+ straight up. If you're a miniature gamer, this is a 3+ for you. I don't know if it's a good miniature game for non-miniature gamers to start in. I think generally, if you're new to miniature gaming, unless this genre, a particular style of this game and theme of this game really appeal to you, I would stick with skirmish games because it's just less to paint, less to learn.
Yeah.
But that said, if you're a miniature gamer and you've been playing with skirmish games and you're looking for an army game now, this is it. The only other criticism I have of this game is that I'm not going to give it a reroll or make it a 2+ because it does lack. It's purely designed, I think, from the ground up for the I don't want to say casual, but the historical gamer or the gamer who's more into narrative play.
Yeah, that's true,
and that's fine. But I think by requiring yourself, and remember when Rick Priestley was on the show, we asked him about this because they included in Antares competitive missions. And I think when you challenge yourself to build a game that at least can be played competitively, you catch a lot of rules niggling that I think is making you, Craig, feel like the game's not quite complete.
Well, and that's another interesting thing. It's an interesting thing which makes me feel like this game falls in the middle somewhere, like it fell through a crack, because Bolt Action 2 is going to have the exact same mission structure that Antares had. So it's going to have 6 competitive missions and 6 asymmetric missions. So it's odd that it's almost as if this was developed in a bunker, isolated from the development of those other 2 games.
Maybe. But anyway, I think it's great. A 3+. I have no regrets, and I'm going to buy many, many more things for this crazy game, so I'm all in. Cool. So, Teras, after hearing all that, what is your desire to try this thing out?
Wow. Well, in a lot of ways you sold me. Actually, in a big way you sold me. This game always is based on bolt action, and I'm a big fan of Warlord Games. John Stollert and the crew are awesome. All the designers that we talked about, that gives me a super amount of confidence in this game, just as a whole, the company itself. Also, like Craig, I really like the fact that you can get started right away. I mean, if you really want to, you can even get started with the Japanese, even though they're kind of far away. I like that there's stuff for you to do, even if you want to. You can't have that gamer. Well, I'm going to hold out to this time, because you don't have that. It's all there for you. You might not know the exact composition, but if you're a painter and a hobbyist, that shouldn't get you down. That should be an exciting part of it anyway. Like Russ, the terrain is an issue. I'm okay with line of sight. I love getting down to see my models, what they're seeing and how they're seeing it. I think that's a great part of wargaming, but it's only to a point. I think that terrain needs a story also. I think that if you can add the story of the terrain to the game, you've gained a lot more narrative. And I think that terrain itself, you do need a good solid story there to add to it. I'm not a historical gamer. I've never been really interested. I think, like we talked before about, this is not. I feel the story is already written. I don't get that with this at all. I think that because they've done the fluff the way they did, the story is yet to be influenced by us, and I think that's a big deal for me. I get a little bit of history though, and so my imagination gets to fire, kind of like watching old war movies, which I love. I think there's room for other cool things in the future. I don't know how far they want to go, but clearly there's somebody on the other side of those rifts, and it would be cool if it was Mars or something like that. I think that would add a little bit of narrative there. Who knows who's on the other side and who's wanting the Earth to be destroyed? So I think that there's tons of room to head in tons of different directions. Like you guys, I'm at a 3+. However, in direct opposition to what Russ said, I think that the reason why Russ didn't give the game a 2-up is exactly the reason why I will give it a 2-up. I think that your guys' stories sold me on the game more than anything else. The fact that you guys could tell stories like that, that's for me wargaming. And the fact that you guys developed a narrative just by rolling dice and moving toys on the table is huge. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, the possibility of it being more of a narrative just by the action of their rules is huge. And so if you're a wargamer and you're into storytelling and you want to build a narrative, this sounds like an unbelievable opportunity. So I'd move it 3+ with a possible 2+, because it's just, if you're a narrative person, this is going to be awesome for you.
Nice. Well, there you have it, a 3+ all around or better.
Or better.
So, Teras, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We really, really appreciate it.
It's always fun to have you
busy
on.
schedule up there in Canada.
It's completely my pleasure. You guys are always awesome to BS about, and I love talking games. So this was great, and thank you for the stories. It was awesome. I'll be smiling about that all night.
So it's awesome to tell these stories to
Teras,
somebody who cares.
If people want to find out more about what you're up to with Geek Nation Tours, where do they go?
Yep, Geek Nation Tours, www.geeknationtours.com. You can email me at headgeek@geeknationtours.com if you've got an idea about something that's cool. We're geeky-wise, we're probably working on it already, but we love to hear ideas. We love to hear that you guys are interested. If you any suggestions or wish lists, we're happy to hear. But yeah, you can find me at www.geeknationtours.com.
And if they want to follow up on that crazy, wacky new radio network you got going on, where do they go for that?
Yeah, the Freebooters Network. So freebootersnetwork.com, just exactly how it is spelled normally. You can take a look at the podcasting there. We're really excited about our new project, tons of podcasts, and get to work with people like you guys. Very honored to do that, and just a adventure all on its own for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Teras, and we look forward to having you back on again in the future.
Thank you very much. I'll hop on whenever you guys like.
Awesome. This is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon, the men and women listeners, all theoretically, who pledge to help us keep this show going in the right direction. Without you gals and guys, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing anymore. So thank you. And in particular today, we've got the remainder of the Chris crew. Chris Holm, Chris Reyes, Chris Young, Christopher Majetic, and Christopher Meyer. Thank you, guys. Thanks for being you. Did you ever notice how much overexcitement can cost you? When you get excited about a new game and you kind of want to go all out and go all in and get all the cool stuff, what's the guarantee, really, that you're going to actually get to use any of that stuff? Or is that just me? I've got to tell you, recently I have made some very bad decisions. As I'm recording this and looking around the pub with stuff just piling up everywhere now at this point, so Russ and I got back into War Machine, of course, as you all know, and I got really excited, and I got reintroduced, and I got some new models, and I painted them up, and so now my Retribution force is bigger than ever. And then I thought, wow, my other friends who don't really play army-sized games anymore, or even skirmish-sized games anymore like this, Russ's brother John and others, if I have the armies, usually I can get them to play some games. So I thought, wow, well, I should probably go in for some War Machine stuff. Maybe they'd like that. And then I thought, well, I don't have any Horde stuff anymore because I sold all mine, so I should go into that. So I thought, well, I should get 2 Hordes games. That way we can introduce just Hordes, and later on the Retribution can come in. And, it seemed to make sense at the time. And I didn't think about it. And I ordered it through a channel that usually has a bit of a lag. And I ordered it the week before Gen Con, and that was foolish. And I dropped a lot of money, pretty much birthday money, and it was crazy. It was ridiculous for 2 full, large-sized War Machine, or Hordes in this case, armies. And of course, it didn't come before Gen Con. And of course, at Gen Con, I got all excited. I knew I was getting the Blood and Plunder models, those awesome models from Warlord Games. I knew that was coming, but I was like, no, I'll do that, and I'll have plenty of time for the Hordes models, and I'll get those all painted up. And then, of course, I fell into the Konflikt 47 face first. And when I got home, I was all into, first I wanted to get those Blood and Plunder models done and ready to go. And then while I was painting those, Russ and I got interested in the Konflikt 47, or I got Russ interested because I already was interested. And so then I went down that rabbit hole. And of course, while I was painting the Blood and Plunder models, all the War Machine models showed up. So 2 full armies in a big cardboard box just staring at me with like big angry eyes. And I thought, I'll get to it, it'll be okay. But now, see, it's been a long time since I've gotten into an army scale game that already had all this amazing stuff available. And so, as an American player in Konflikt 47, I don't have that much, really. Other than the starter box, if you're lucky enough to get yourself a Grizzly, then you're like doing good, because I haven't been able to get anything. But there's so much else that you can get. And those models are available all over the place. And so they came trickling in. So I did the whole starter with a couple blisters extra that I picked up at Adler Hobby. So I would have, the HQ guys, and I would have a few extra bar gunners. I would have a few extra things. And then online I found these other, manufacturers who also sold, and I wanted some variation in my bar gunners, so I got some of those. And then I found some other things online, and then back in Adler I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a really cool medium howitzer, that's cool. So I picked that up, and so now it's like this constant dribble. But then what I really did, which was a mistake, because I should have, when I start seeing myself do this, I really should probably key in that this is what I'm doing. I ordered again, I put in a big order, and it's big. All right, it's big. It's gonna probably triple the size, if not quadruple the size, of the bolt action / Konflikt 47 game, our army that I'm building. And I got Russ to play with this. So I'm going to have a giant, enormous army that I can only play really with Russ. I mean, trying to pin Rafe down is crazy. And our friend Old Andy, I think he has some models too, but he hasn't really been overly interested too much. So why did I do that? And I don't know. And this is again, and I think I keep making this realization, and I keep telling you guys about this realization, and then I keep forgetting that I've made this realization, is that I have to find my satisfaction in painting and modeling, and that's what which doesn't help when you've got 2 giant Hordes armies in a box. See, that's where the whole theory trips up. But if I focus right now, I think I got Konflikt 47. And so if I enjoy the models that I'm putting together, which I do, they're great. And if I enjoy the finished product, which I do, I love the tanks, I love the guide, the infantry, I love the teams, putting the teams together, getting a little character there with the teams. So that's what I got to focus on right now with this giant, enormous order that, I'm half dreading and half anticipating with childlike delight landing on my doorstep, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I'd hate for something else to come up and demand my time, and then this lands, and then I've got 3 full giant armies in cardboard boxes just staring at me, because lately I've been pretty good about keeping up with the models that I've got. I've only got like 1 or 2 here or there in armies that in games that I'm still playing. I'm getting rid of lots of stuff on eBay. Pretty much any game that I collected that I haven't played in a couple years all went up on eBay. A lot of my Infinity stuff just went for a really nice price, so that was nice. My painted Infinity stuff. So I'm making some room, sadly, not at the same rate that I'm gathering more material, but, you do what you got to do. But the key is, I guess, what I've got to focus on is my enjoyment of painting and modeling and getting that. But I also have to not buy stuff just to buy stuff, to acquire. And I think that's a problem that I have, that I like to acquire stuff, that I get kind of a little bit of a thrill just clicking and buying and having stuff show up at my house. And I think that's a sickness. I think that's bad. I mean, it's not as bad as, like, say, drugs or something like that, but it's not helpful. That's for sure. And somehow I have to come up with a way to school myself with this. And I'm not sure how to do that. So I'll be working on that while you're working on your stuff. And together we'll all march with our heads up into the future. Or something like that. That's all I got to talk about tonight. So thanks for listening, and not to be redundant, but good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
You sure you don't swear a heck of a lot?
It's a heck of a lot, Teras. You swear a heck of a lot.
More than, we don't even have a word like cuss. American is a,
right.
American. That's a cuss. Word is
only
American.
when those darn tourists are up here on the escalators, on the wrong side of the escalators, do you actually
That's right.
to swear.
You unbelievably bloop, 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 bloop. Right. Americans, get them right over.
Get off my escalator. Take the stairs, you lazy fat American scum. I mean, please.
Ooh, fat. You had to go there?
Hey. I'm telling you, man, if you get on the wrong side of an escalator in Canada, it's a thing. I'm just saying.
It is.
Don't be that guy. Just saying.